We're already getting into genetics. We start to talk about the Caviar lemons, we get into the sours, the cherry sours, and then we get into the guzz. We talk about relationship building, what this industry takes from you and what it leaves. Yeah, we got Elusive on today. This is a good one. For all you smokers, for all you growers, connoisseurs, hunters of strains, we get into all that. No matter where you are, FSOTD.com is how you get hooked up because you're family. You are your First Smoke family. So we hook you up like that. Go to FSOTD.com. You get linked up with every sponsor we have on the pod, and you get discounts. And you get hooked up directly to them. So you're not buying fake papers or bunk ass whatever. FSOTD.com. Let's get into it, though. Here we go. Roll up, though. Roll up right now.
Cause they're like, bro, you get this you're gonna be like a real life Scarface, bro, like just legally selling weed though. They can't do nothing to you, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. The police came in and started robbing me. The same two cops were showing up monthly. It took me 5 years, bro, to build that facility, bro. I come up to this one and I'm like, I don't even need to look at the rest of these. Whatever this is, I come back inside and I'm like, all right, bro, let's smoke it. Bobby's like, I smoked it all.
All right, it's already getting smoky. We have already started. We're a hash hole deep. I'm here with Ron from Elusive. You guys saw the Pheno Hunt podcast where we had all the homies here. We went through all the different phenos. Ron and I had such an interesting convo before and after, and then even on the phone. And you guys know him for being behind the Eazy brand as well, putting out fire through that. I hear about the pack prices in LA. I hear all the rumors and all that stuff. You're doing something really cool, bro. Welcome to First Smoke of the Day.
Hey, man. Thank you, Lance. I appreciate you having me here, man. It's been a long time coming. I remember we, run into each other many times and had conversations like you had said. And it just, I felt like, this is good timing, man. Like a lot of good things that happened. Obviously, we both evolved and big things are happening. And like I said, shout out to you. Even when I was talking to you earlier, I was telling you, it's big time what you do for this industry and everything that you've done. And being able to allow people to get their stories out there and just so people almost get like a behind the scenes view of like how something became something and what's behind this and everything. It's a big deal to be able to for people to do that and you to supply a platform for people to be able to do that.
Yeah. I really appreciate you saying that, bro. There's like a Nas line, like, don't pay attention to the youth because it's not like the youth depends on it. It's like I get so many messages from guys that are growers or hustlers or want to be in the game or are passionate about this. And this platform has helped them. Yeah, because 100%. It becomes real now. Because like when you look at a big brand and like all of us maybe looked at Connected before we met Caleb. Yeah. It was such an umbrella of a brand. It's so big that it's like, how could I ever build something like that for most people? Yeah. And then you meet the guys behind it and you hear their story and how real it is where you're like, dude, my shit ain't that different. Yeah. And I think, and this is just the coolest thing for me, I think it becomes attainable. You start to see that glass ceiling kind of disappear, at least in your mind. And you go like, damn, bro, I know that guy, like, or I've met him, or I would like to work for him, or I have a similar journey, bro. Like, I don't know, that connection of like, it's not bigger than you, bro. You can become as big as you want. And then also here's the knowledge. Yep. So for all these home growers there's so much information out there for you, where for us, there was not that.
No, not at all.
Bro, you had to seek it out, and then you had to decipher if it was good shit or bad shit. Not just like, oh, well, this is working in the grow. It's like, well, would that work for my grow? You're distilling molasses and do it, I love to sit down with guys like you, though, because there's a special type of grower in this industry who's okay with taking the back seat a little bit and having other people shine with their work. Yeah. And I like that, bro, because I think there's a lot of different positions on the baseball field.
Yeah.
And the team wins either way.
Yeah, it's all team.
But some guys don't have that in them. As soon as they get a little shine, they're like, no, bro, listen. And they'll take everything that got them there, push it to the wayside, though, and be like, I'm me.
Yeah.
I like when people are like, no, I'm a team player. I'm me, but he's him, and we do this. And Can you talk about meeting Eazy, bro? And I want us to just start there because a lot of guys from the Northeast are abrasive. That's just like, I've dealt with him. Was your meeting with him, was it just all love in the beginning? Was it just smooth?
No, honestly, it was a long road, bro. It was really funny because, here I was, like, I felt like we were finally getting like packs to where I wanted them to be. And mind you, something in the back end of it is like, Bobby was the king of candy. You know what I mean? For the longest time, right? And so here I am walking in the door showing him 9 candies, right? Like I was like coming in the door and he's like, all right, what you got? Let me see. What is it? An LCG or whatever? No, I'm like, nah, bro, this is that. And he's like, what the fuck? What do I want to see? All right. I do like weed. Let me see that, And so he would look at it. And it was funny because I think even out of the gate, when we had set it up, it was like, he had a respect for it because he does like good weed. Right. But when he in his head, he's like, wow, I would really smoke this. And I love that. But like, I don't even know how I could sell this right now, because this is not what they want. And so, but it's fire, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, bro, we're here. Like, let's smoke it. Let's smoke it right now. And, he had his QC team there with him. So, Pax of the Future was there and a few other guys. And so, they all looked at it. But like I said, they were just so caught up on the candy stuff that it was like, you're coming in the door showing them exactly not what they're asking for. Right.
Next wave.
Yeah. And so that was my thing was like, trying to, talk to him and be like, well, look, I know you're doing the candy thing. And, for me, it was funny because I was like, I stopped running the candies because I thought them shits were going to end at some point. You know what I mean?
And if you're the last one on the totem pole, you lose.
Oh, bro. And that happened multiple times. Cause look, when COVID hit, if you had RS11, bro, you were getting $4,000 a pound. And then until you weren't. And then when it didn't go from like 4,000 to 3,000, it went to 4,000 and they didn't want to buy the pack. And now you have to figure out where you're going to sell it and how and stuff.
You're like, this is RS12 now.
Yeah.
Right. Bro.
So, but when I was in there, we had a good talk. But he was just like, "Look, man, it was kind of funny. It was almost like a coach talking to a good player who he knows is a talent, and he's like, he's just like, hey, man, you're just not ready yet. But you know what? Like, I see what you're doing, and give me a pat in the back and send me out the door type thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, what just happened, bro? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so, but I stayed in contact with him and with Pax of the Future, and I kept telling him, because he's like, hey, man, you got some Pax hit me up like, you got some OG, you got this. I'm like, bro, let me show you some OG, bro. Like, fuck yeah, I like that you like OG. So, I show him, he's like, oh, bro, this is fucking crazy, And we kept everything moving. And, like I said, it took a little while. And,
what was the strain that broke it open for you and him? Was there one where he's like, yeah, this is what's up?
Well, so fast forward, a little bit of time goes by. And, he's telling me, he goes, like, look, bro, people are starting to ask for something different now. You know what I mean? And he was like, what you got under, coming out? And I said, well, look, man, I got some Z coming up. And I'm like, honestly, maybe that's a good segue from going from candy, because it kind of is a candy, but it's not a candy. And he was like, you know what, man, New York, they don't like candy, And I'm like, well, how do we know what if it's fire? So he's like, all right, well, fuck it, bring it by. And I show him some fire ass Z, right? And he was looking at it, he was like, yo, what the fuck? I'll smoke this whole bag myself. And he started like smoking this and let me sit on this and think about it. And basically that was the initial one that started the Zebras. And he was just like, yo, I'm going to put this in some shit. I'm going to call it Zebras, like, whatever, let's do this. And we started putting it out there. And it was funny because I think it was crazy because we started a new wave for Z in New York. Because New York was shut out to them. Now, nobody wanted the Z. Nobody wanted the Z. So then get to this point where all of a sudden people were like, yo, this shit is fucking fire. What else? You got more of this, And so then it was like, we started kind of doing it. We tried some other strains and it just started being this thing where, and these are things that I learned along the way, right? Is that like, you don't want to take away, especially when you're giving somebody something new, you don't want to take away the familiarity aspect, right? So you can't just come in with something completely new for them. You have to give them a twist on something that they're familiar with, but that's trickled in with something new, right?
That's game. That's game for everyone listening.
Yeah, no, this was hard for me to learn because, literally, like I said, it was like, and I said this in the Pheno Hunt episode. Yeah. It was like, no matter what I think I'm coming in the door, and again, like how I first went into Bobby, I'm like, bro, this is fire. And anybody turns this down, they don't know what good weed is, and then to realize like, well, shit, you still got to give them that familiar, something that hits home in it. The same way even Bobby said when he did his packaging, it was like, when he did the cereal boxes, he's like, it hits people in an aspect where they think about their childhood and they think about their stuff. So again, that familiarity aspect that you give them. So it was like, all right, let's start, and then once we saw that the Z was working, it was like, well, let's find Z crosses like other Zs. And the interesting thing was at first it was like, again, more things you learn along the way. We're looking at it and it's like, you're trying to find something and you want it to be as close as Z as possible. But then afterwards, it was like, no, that's not what you want because it's too much of the same thing. You want to take what Z brings to the table, and that's that it brings a heightened taste. It brings a heightened smell, heightened smokability of something, right? But when you're crossing that to other strains, you're looking for what's pulled out from that strain. And so now all of a sudden you're making this amazing hybrid of the two things that equal out to be a winner, right? And so we just started, doing this trial and error thing. And it took a while where it was like, going around picking up as many Z crosses as we could or hunting Z crosses and just trying to get people to like see which ones resonated. And then for me, after that, what ended up being another segue with the Bobby thing, because Bobby honestly had been a dream to work with. There was a lot of people, talking mad shit, like, oh, he don't have good weed, all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, well, that's the reason why I'm working with them. If you feel that way, because now you're talking about my weed, you're not talking about his weed because I'm the one growing it. It's funny to
hold it against you though, when you're like, no, I'm changing. That's why I'm in the gym.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, listen. And it's like, that's why you just put the blinders on and keep working.
Yeah.
And so, but that's awesome that you said that he's a dream to work with, because I think most people think of trappers and they just think of this and they go, oh, what a nightmare. And it's like, no, dude, how you think most of people survive? Yeah. And like, if the relationship's good, it's really good.
Yeah. 100. Yeah. It's like, cause I think that a lot of people have this image, and mind you, bro, he's a showman. You know what I mean? So like the shit that you're seeing when you're reading Twitter, the shit that you see when he's making these crazy videos and he's doing this wild shit and he's like literally walking around with a stick poking bears. You're like, bro, this guy, fuck this guy, but that's not the real Bobby. Once you start sitting down with them and I'm having dinners with them and having conversations with them, and he's a real one. You know what I mean? Like
we did that first episode. He talked about his life and the journey he's had.
Yeah, crazy.
And I don't think you could listen to that and not be like a fan of at least rooting for someone.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you like movies, it's like a half a movie. It's like, yeah, bro, like did he make it? It feels like that. And that's why I wanted to talk about you guys coming together. One of my questions that came up is, do you think New York was opposed to the Z at first because they had a bunch of fake Skittles packs or Dep Skittles? Like, I wonder why they were so opposed. It just wasn't something they were used to.
Bro, they were 100% candy, bro. If you were showing them something and it wasn't exactly what that candy that they were looking for, then they didn't want it, bro. And that's just, like I said, you can't go against the wave in a situation like that. You know what I mean? It's like going to a Rolls Royce dealership and asking for Kia prices and changing it up on them. They're like, we don't sell Kias, we sell Rolls Royces. You know what I mean?
It's such a good lesson, because like when we ask like, what's the next wave, or when people are trying to predict, it's like something that you've known that's reminiscent of that was something new.
Yeah.
Like that, whatever combination, whether it's 90-10 or 50-50 or 90-10 the other way, or any number in between there, that sliding scale of what Pheno pushes onto the other Pheno, or what traits are giving left behind on the smoke. I feel like it's always that. So it's like, well, whatever's big now. So it's like, okay, what's next? You talk about candies and then Skittles. It's like, well, yeah, Skittles times chem. Mm-hmm. LCG times chem. And then they want something interesting. It makes so much sense, bro.
People ask me, how do you grow it like this? How does it stay consistent? First of all, HGV produces a consistent product. If it wasn't consistent, would I have consistent flower, consistent harvest? Probably not.
It creates good consistency, high yield, and high terpene levels. It allows us to fully express the characteristics in our phenos.
I've been running HGV for a long time. Cleanest salt line that I've had.
As soon as we made the switch, the instant thing we seen was the clarity of our tanks.
I've been doing HGV for 7 years, haven't had one clog dripper due to the nutrient.
I can call HGV during the day, at night. Shout out to Nick for answering our calls like whenever.
They're efficient, they're friendly, they're a good company, and we really enjoy working with them.
I use HGV from veg, even on our clones. I use HGV for everything. I even sprinkle it on my steak.
I wanted to talk to you about your journey, but I wanted to talk about the static wave before we get into that.
Word.
Because you were one of the first people where I feel like you were on the cutting edge of static coming here and being into the motion of it. And not many people understand how big of a wave is here and building for static. Can we
100%.
touch that before we get into your journey?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I think there's all these, it's funny because we are in such an industry, we're in an industry that is so new, right? And there's not a lot of education on certain things. And then obviously as time goes by, there's a lot of these things that have been out there for a while. It's not like static just all of a sudden popped up out of nowhere. It's been big for a while. It's just that it just didn't get its limelight yet. You know what I mean? And so again, it's just a timing thing. I think once everybody started to, hear some of the stories and figure it out, then obviously, this is a game where there can be a lot of money at the end of the rainbow. It's just that like, you're trying to figure out where the rainbow is, right? And so like, these things will pop up. I think, static has its place. There's like, brands doing crazy things, Static Room, Static Labs, like all those guys, they create the top tier product. Obviously there's other people going and, creating some of it themselves and stuff. But I don't know. I guess for me, I just try to stay in tune with the market and the streets and like different aspects, because we're doing so many different aspects right now with my brand and with, and most people are in general, right? Because it's like, you're like, I got to do this for my rec, and I got to do this for this, and I got to do this for this, and I got to do this for this. So really it's just about like, literally hitting the pavement, talking to the right people. And like I said, when we were just talking about the candy for New York, right? It's like you give people what they want, bro. Don't try and fight it and pitch to them that this is why this should be. If you already know and you get the feeling that somebody doesn't want something, then don't try and sell it to them anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, it's more about, look, they're telling you what they want, give them what they want. And that's the number one goal. I think that's where static is right now, is that, now people are starting to hear the stories, but at the end of the day, it's just like people want it, And
You think there's going to be a US wave of static, or you think it's...
Oh yeah, no, there already is.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a subwave. So it's like, I would say obviously it's more of a European thing, and that's where it originated and started. But definitely it was funny because even when I would like, if I like put something up with the static, I got people in New York, people in like North Carolina, and like some of these people are like, bro, I need static. And I'm like, really? You know what I mean? I'm like, I never heard that before.
You were the first brand where I started seeing the packaging and I was like, oh, Elusive? And then I started to recognize this style of brick or whatever that you, and then I just am a fly on the wall in these convos, and I keep hearing like, I want it in 50 gram, bricks, and I want it. And then I see the branding starting to get involved, and it's so interesting, bro. And I love that you're so connected to what's going on, that I first saw it from you guys. And there were obviously people doing it way back, and Tenco's been doing it and all that.
Yeah.
But as far as like the style and the collabs and the consistency, it's such an interesting market that has yet to really be talked about openly in public. Is that, static sift, bro. It's heavy. A lot of the producers here are running it.
Yeah.
And it's for a very specific market, which is interesting too. It reminds me of when rosin first started a little bit, where you're like, you would hear about this new tech, but it was solventless, but it's not solventless it's different now, and they're pressing the bubble, and you kind of were like, okay, let's see where this goes, and then you just go boom.
Yep.
Your journey, bro, is interesting because we hear a lot about who you're working with, the strains you're running, the hunting, the growing. We don't hear a lot about how you got here. Can you give us, I want to know how you got into weed. I want to know a little bit about your childhood.
It was funny because one of my people on my team was just telling me, they're like, why do I feel like you've lived like 6 lives? And I was like, I think I have. I was like, I'm not sure. I'm like, because I've been here for a long time, like through all the different waves, when it was like literally when I was cultivating and then there was no competition. You know what I mean? Like everybody thought you were crazy for having to grow in the first place. You know what I mean? And like nobody wanted to take the chance with the risks and this and that came with it. And then, but basically for me, it was like, I started out with having a dispensary. I got hit up by one of my boys and he was basically like, man, this guy's got a dispensary. He's about to get rid of this. This was like back in I can't remember exactly, but I want to say it was like 07, bro. Like the pre-ICO. No, I didn't. I had done well for myself in other businesses. Like, I was a finance major, and got a degree on finance. And then basically I was doing the finance thing for a little bit. And I was always coming out to Cali, and like one of my boys who, I would go out to clubs with and stuff was like, hey, this guy's got this dispensary for sale. And mind you, like I've been in weed since I was like a kid, bro. I got like kicked out of school for selling weed, like all that type of stuff. So like I loved weed, since day one. And, I was like, okay, this sounds kind of cool. And, I'm like, what's the deal? And he's like, hey man, he has pit bulls and he got, had some pit bull fighting and caught some charges. He's going to lose his license because of it being a felony, and I was like, okay, cool. So, I was kind of rushing into it. I said, look, what do we got to do? I don't want to buy this and let's try it. I'm thinking like, man, this is crazy. And mind you too, you got your homies hyping you up behind, cause they're like, bro, you get this shit. You're going to be like a real life Scarface, bro. Like just legally selling weed though. They can't do nothing to you, And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Oh yeah. So I'm like, all right, man, what do we got to do to wrap this up? And I get into it, and it was funny because that shit was horrible, bro. It was horrible.
They're talking about all the upside with no downside.
Bro, I was losing money every month, bro. I was trying to figure out these equations because it's these nonstop equations, And so like I'm watching it. I got my people, like one of the guys who was running the shop, he was the head guy at Zen, right? And Zen at one point was like the spot.
Popping.
You know what I mean? Like they were just printing money. But the problem I learned from that is that he was the manager there after they were already popping. So it's like handing the person the keys to the Ferrari and thinking that they, they drive it much better. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's a fucking Ferrari, bro. It's already running, bro. All you got to do is get in the keys and get in the car, turn the keys and it's running, And so I brought him in, and like I said, it was just one thing after the other. Everybody just extorting money out of me. You know what I mean? Like, and mind you, like I said, at that time I was still I had other businesses and stuff. So I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So I was like, operating a cash business, like half in, half out, like a moron. You know what I mean? It wasn't smart. It was just a bad recipe. These guys were, stealing from me all the time, doing all this stuff. And then eventually
lesson though for anyone listening.
Oh, bro, it's crazy. And then
you have to be all in. And what gets unseen gets undone.
100%, especially again, in a cash business. And at that time, it wasn't like you want cameras in your place. You're trying to literally, if some shit goes down, you want no evidence, right? So, you got these people doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I ended up having people that were like, my security in there and stuff like that. They were setting up robberies. And then eventually it just got to the point where the police came in and started robbing me. And literally the same 2 cops were showing up monthly, bro, on pay. It was basically, I was like, and the funny part was they were coming in like payroll. They would clear everything out. But the funny part for me was it wasn't like they were just showing up and they're like, give me my money. Here's the bread in the envelope, get out of here. Thank you. They had to come in and pull a gun out and start, flashing every time, bro. Like it was a rob. I think they were getting off on it. You know what I mean? Like they were later. I'm like, again, here they are. All right. right, they're pointing the gun at everybody. All right, let's get through this first part. Everybody just, cooperate with them, and then we'll give them the money, and then they're going to steal some of the weed, and this, you know what I mean? And it was like, so,
You're like, here they come, put the smalls out.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I wish it was that easy, but but yeah, no, we had to go through that process, and it was just ugly. Like I said, I was losing money, and then the funny part of it is that I ended up linking up with one of my boys, and he had a shop, super successful, and he was like, look, man, you got to go on Weed Tracker, post a banner, go on the website for him, do a special, do this, do that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, damn, but that's just $10,000 for the cheapest one. He's like, nah, do the fucking, $15,000 to $20,000 program a month. And I'm like, already getting people robbing me and shit. And on top of this, now I got to spend this money. So I'm like, all right, fuck it, let's try it and see what happens. And it was crazy, bro, because we did that shit. And then like, it was like flipping a switch, bro. Within like 3-4 days, there's a line down the street at the store every day, and it's starting to make money now,
Wow, and, so that shit worked.
Bro, it was literally the cheat code back then for that shit. You know what I mean? And it was funny because they told me, they were like, bro, we have 3 stores, we're doing this, just do this, I promise you. And I'm like, all right, bro, I'm gonna try it. And it worked, bro. And then it's funny because obviously, like, the shop was in off of Highland in Hollywood, and the music school's down there. So once people started seeing the lines and all this stuff, then all of a sudden the people from the music school started, what's this? And they just, it was feeding off it.
Smoking shit. Bro. To be like, no, there's a spot over here I go to.
Yeah.
Damn.
So then all that stuff started popping off, but then it was mad funny. Then I get the notice from the city. They're like, your license is, the paperwork was fake. So this fucker sold me fake paperwork, bro. And mind you, because it came from my boy, and I was gonna go get a lawyer and fucking have him review it, and my dumbass, because he was, kept telling me, nah, bro, it's my boy, we gotta make this move fast. And I just did it. I didn't check the paperwork, and basically ended up finding out I bought a dud, And so I was like, damn, this is crazy. So the city sent me a notice saying they were gonna fine me $2,500 a day for staying open. And I'm making like $2,800 a day now. You know what I mean? So I'm like, bro, and then after again, going through the expenses and running the math, you're like, bro, I'm not gonna make money again, And so, but it was crazy because then that's really how I got parlayed into cultivation. Basically, one of the guys that came in that was bringing me the most fire OG, that was the only item in my shop that every time was like the first thing that sold out. So as soon as we had any one of these 3 OGs, Skywalker, PK, SFV, they were like gone. You know what I mean? And he basically was like, the guy was talking to me at one point when he's coming in, and he's like, hey man, you want to get into growing weed? So I was like, yeah, let's talk about this, because like my experience already in this is like not that great, but I do like the concept of like not having retail anymore,
It's just funny to be like, you want to go in even deeper?
Yeah.
To like the trenches of this shit?
Yeah.
Wow.
But for me, I mean, I think it fit more of my speed because, the retail is more forward facing and all this other stuff. And for me, I'd always been a super private person. You know what I mean? Like, even when I have nice things, I don't go showing it off. Like you were talking about, like being the guy behind the scenes with like Be Easy and some of this other stuff and other people that I work with. Cause I got a lot of big brands that I work with right now that'll like buy some boutique stuff from me and they'll tell me, oh bro, with your stuff, I always kill it. Right. And
you're like the gas in the tank.
Yeah. And we're not making it known public for most people. Bobby obviously was one of the first people. He put the name on the jar and started, he's like, bro, I'm gonna speak out. They're gonna end up finding out eventually. He was like, I'd rather just get it over with as long as you promise me you got some loyalty to me, and I've shown him loyalty, obviously. And so it was like, so anyway, I get this guy and I'm like, all right, let's get in.
And it worked out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just for ending of the story, like that worked out. Like
exactly. That parlayed me into it. And it was crazy because we ended up getting into it. And then once we started cultivating, like I said, cultivation was the opposite of fucking of this shit. Cause like I said, we had the strains, we had the OG, and back then the OG was what the candy was for New York and some of these other places. OG was California, And
so he brought you right in. Like it wasn't even like, hey bro, you should start growing and then I'll teach you how to grow, but you got to gear up. It was like, we're going to grow the same strains that have been crushing for in your
100%, bro.
Wow, that's dope.
And so it was like, we went in right in on that and then started doing it. And then, I mean, bro, that shit was crazy, bro. Like, cause I mean, like when I was watching how we were kind of doing it and everything was happening, I mean, you're talking about like, back then the pot prices were like $7-8 bands a unit, pre-selling out the whole facility.
And what's he doing? Is he doing pots? Is he doing overhead lights? Is it a warehouse? Is it houses? What style?
We started, the houses were a thing at one point, and then obviously it was like, hey, bro, if we're going to do this, let's try and get into some like commercial situation. Got into the commercial situation and then started running it. It was HPS lights, obviously, and then, you know, just setting up the rooms and pots and everything. You know what I mean? Like, it was a basic setup back then, but
makes sense. That's what OG's thrive in for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, they love the HPS, you know, and especially too, it was like, you know, back then was like the you know, the 20-part formula, you know, the this and the that, and buying everything off the shelf, and somehow it all fucking made it better. You know what I mean? Like
weighing shit out on scales, and I'm like, dude, I'm weighing half of it's liquid, the other half's powders that I'm measuring on scale. I'm like, yeah, all right, this shit better be fire.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Cultivators, Under Canopy Lighting is changing the game. And with that, Faven Under Canopy Lighting. They're one of our premier sponsors, and it's a brand we truly believe in. If you want to check out favenlighting.com, you can get all the answers to what Under Canopy is and is how it's changing the game. And guess what? You're family, so we hook you up. The code is FSOTD, and you get hooked up with Faven Lighting. They put together a full layout of how you would set your facility or grow room up using their Under Canopy lighting. Whether you're using CMH, double-ended, fluorescents, LEDs, it doesn't matter. Faven Lighting has you covered. Go to favenlighting.com, use the code FSOTD, get hooked up, and change your grow game. Come on, cultivators.
And especially too, because back then it was funny because the rent was cheap, the power was cheap. Actually, the most expensive shit was the nutrients and shit like that. So you're kind of like going through the math and you're just like, damn, all right, so this is this. And you're just like, fuck. And like I said, that equation, it didn't even make sense, bro. But then that's why I feel like, obviously, that's why it got so saturated with so many people growing, because they're like, wait a second, I could do this and I don't got to run everything that they're running. And I'm going to do this. And if I go, I could go get the strain from this guy and then start running it. And then it just starts like basically, you know, watering it down, supply and demand. You know, the supply goes up and demand goes down. And, you know, I went through it and it was crazy because the place that we are cultivating stuff right now, that was my baby, bro. I had that thing like for a long time. You know what I mean? I don't even know how many years. But like I said, it was like, you know, back in those days, it was tied to the dispensary at one point as the, you know, the caregivers, you know, facility that's tied to the shop, or even though at the end the paperwork was bunk, you know what I mean? So, but we, you know, and then we started running it. And then basically like I kind of watched as over the years as everything was kind of going down, the quality was going down. We hadn't done a rebuild. And then basically it came up to a point where it was like, yo, like, you know, we need to like basically refresh everything. Let's like go back in and do a rebuild. We go in, we do a rebuild on the facility, and, you know, probably about like 3 weeks into the first run, the fucking power blows up. The pole blows up. I get a call from my guy. And this, you're going to love this. This was the best. So my guy calls me up. Bro, the power's out. I'm like, what happened? He's like, the transformer outside blew up. I'm like thinking, oh, fuck, of all the things. You know what I mean? Because that means that we got to call the DWP type thing. At least as far as I knew at that moment. Because I didn't know anybody else that could do any like backdoor stuff for me. And I'm like, what do you think happened? You know? And he's like, there was a bird. There was a bird. And it was on the pole. And mind you, like, it's like 2 a.m. You know what I mean? I'm like, how did you see the bird on the wire, bro? And he's like, well, no, I don't know. I think it was definitely a bird, and it, because like something weird fell down. And I'm like, bro, this sounds crazy. You know what I mean? You sound crazy. And so, you know, then basically at that point, I'm like, oh shit. You know what I mean? I had just spent 7 figures rebuilding this spot to like make it legit, thinking that this was going to be the savior.
And time's of the essence, because you're like, okay, what's in bloom? What's in veg?
Bro, already start. Yes,
and
bro.
You know that shit takes a while to even just rebuild that.
Yeah.
That ain't like a come in, flip a switch.
Nope.
It's like they got to rebuild, they got to break shit down.
Yeah, and then I'm like, you know, talk to my partner, and he's basically like, yo, he's like, bro, we got to get generators over here, and that's how we're gonna like get the switch flip back on, and like we're gonna start running it. So we get these, and again, I knew nothing. Like after later on doing the rebuild with my new partner on the place, I learned so much about building and stuff that I know now that I didn't know back back then. So I'm like, all right, cool. Like, what are we going to do? And it's like, well, just get this generator guy and we'll just like pay him a monthly fee for the generators and keep everything running. And, you know, instead of him bringing over one giant generator that's going to run the whole facility, he brings like 2 little pipsqueaks. You know what I mean? And we start running them. But, you know, like think about just logically, it's like taking an engine and putting it like your foot on the pedal and just flooring it the whole time and running it, bro. It's just going to waste gas nonstop, right? And whereas if you have a big generator that's overpowered, it's going to like run smooth and slow like a Cadillac, and you're going to like be able to stretch it out. And so, you know, we were running the generators to keep everything alive, and the guy came in, he set it up. But the problem is like, you know, again, I hadn't got the bills yet. So then all of a sudden, you know, you're running it with the generators. And I thought it was weird because I'm like, how come every 3 days we need to refill the diesel? You know what I mean? The fuel that we're running. And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. Nobody knew the answer, you know? And so we just kept running it. And, you know, next thing I know, I'm like, what was at one point a power bill that was between like $12,000 to $18,000 a month. It was now, you know, $45,000 a month in fuel alone. And then, like I said, at that point, the pack prices were struggling, you know what I mean? And we're down. So when you really started crunching the numbers, because I'm a numbers guy, it was like, bro, this shit ain't really penning out no more. You know what I mean? Like, what are we going to do? But I just spent all this money rebuilding this spot, and I'm like stuck in this spot right now. All right, like keep it running. So we try to make it through. But
electric company never came out.
So because we held off, we never called them. You know, and so then
only in LA.
Oh, bro,
would they just not come out?
Oh, and stuff melted on the concrete outside. You know, with the transformer, like, you know, basically dangling at the top. You know, and we're running the spot and just trying to get through. But obviously, the first run already got messed up just by the timing and stuff. But then, you know, the guy was telling me, who was the electrical guy that we were using, was like, hey man, I'm going to wire this up to the box. And he's like, let's do it so it looks legal and up to code. And I was like, okay, why would I want to do that? And he's like, trust me, it'll just be better. Cause then if like the city does come in, we can show them that everything looks like legit and it's not going to look like, you know, janky. So I was like, okay, cool. So then he goes and hooks everything up. I think everything's good. And basically, like I said, once I started seeing the bills piling up, I was like, yo, I'm calling the fucking power people out, bro. I'm going to try and fucking see what I can do. So I call them. They're like, what's going on in there? I was like, look, I don't know what happened. It just, you know, I was told, and it was funny because I told them, you know, I don't know. My people thought there was like a bird on the transformer and went up, and these, you know, they're laughing at me on the phone. They're just like, yeah, he said there was a bird on the transformer, you know? And so I'm like, you know, but I didn't have a better story. I'm just like, you know, I was just like, hey, at the end of the day, what are we going to do? We're just going to pull them in here and hope that they, you know, put a new transformer and let's keep moving. And they're like, all right, fine. We'll do the transformer, but we got to come out there and, you know, view the property. And so I was like, okay, cool. They're like, but then it was funny because then they're like, but we noticed that your power bills weren't paid properly. The meter was off, according to the, you know, RF transmitter, and you owe $85,000. So, which I think they were just trying to get me to pay for the transformer up front. You know what I mean? So, like, you know, I'm like, all right, so if I give you $85,000, you're going to come back, you're going to put the transformer back up, everything's cool? Yeah, all right. So I go over, pay $85,000. I call them. I'm like, all right, ready for you guys to put the transformer. And they're like, oh, actually, you know what? There's one more catch now. And I'm like, what do you mean there's one more catch? You guys told me when I asked you 5 times. They're like, we have to go and do a walkthrough in the facility and look at the facility. So I'm like, all right, come on in. And yo, I'll tell you what, you know, it was kind of crazy because they come in with the full team, right? They come in with the revenue and security team and like some other, you know, engineers from there. And they're like walking through the place. And, you know, like I said, the old school grows, bro, them shits were like, you know, extension cords hanging from the ceiling. Like, you know, the place was a fire hazard.
Drywall, whatever,
yeah.
Or even just sheet pan.
Yeah. And, you know, they brought the fire department, everything. And it was crazy because we go through the place. And like I said, the way I was talking to them and everything, it seemed like they were like cool, you know, and they're like, hey man, this is cool. And like I said, even though there was fire hazards and all this stuff, they were like, you know, the fire guys were like, nah, I don't have a problem with this, whatever, you know what I mean? And, you know, the other guys were like, okay. And so I'm like, holy shit, like we're literally coming down to like the 1 yard line. And I think we were about to pull this off and turn the switch back on. And then that's when it happened, bro. They look over and the guy looks over and he goes, hey, wait, look, he has the generators plugged into the switch gear. And I'm like, yeah, that's up to code. The guy guy did it up to code. He goes, yeah, it would have been up to code if you put it on your side. You plugged it into the DWP side. You're stealing power. And I was like, I'm not stealing power, man. I'm like, look at my bills. I paid you guys M's. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they're like, no, he's stealing power. Shut the place down. Shut the place down. Red tag this. So they go in, they literally shut the place down. And it was crazy because, you know, at this point I'm thinking like, all right, I'm going to probably leave the spot. Like, it's over. It's burnt now, you know? Exactly. But at that same timing, it just happened to be the timing was that they came out and they said that the zoning for legal cannabis was hitting. And of course it's in the zone. And so I'm like, and mind you, we had other spots. It's not in the zone. You know what I mean? So I'm like, well, shit, I'm gonna have to fix this, you know? And
so the spot you were about to walk away from
is my only hope to get into legal cannabis.
Oh my God.
And so I was basically like, you know what? I got to just, you know, try it. So I go in and it was funny because that was it was a crazy adventure, man. It was crazy because, you know, when the DWP comes back, they're like, okay, cool. They're like, we're going to call the building department and now you have to have the building department. And so the building department guy comes in and he goes
stones,
dude.
Bro. Even sticking around. Most dudes I know would have been like, change my phone number, disappear, move from my address. Like for you to carry that through and keep meeting with them, and being like, no, what are we gonna do here? Wow.
It was like I said, it was an adventure because when I first did it, and then basically we were talking, and the guy comes in and starts looking at everything. Essentially, he walks through everything, and he's like, yeah, okay, so here's the solution. I want everything gone out of the facility. And I'm like, what do you mean gone? Like everything? He goes, I want this a bare warehouse. I don't want anything in here besides the walls, the concrete floor, and that ceiling that's up there. And I was like, all right, so I go in, spend a shitload of money, clear the place out, and then call the guy up, and he comes back and he goes, looks at everything. He's like, all right, cool. He goes, I need to go on the roof, but I still had the ACs on the roof. And so I'm like, yeah, there's nothing up there besides the ACs. And he's like, well, we got to go look at it. He goes upstairs, looks at it. He's like, I want all the ACs gone. I'm like, why do I have to get rid of the ACs?
Because you're like, I'm about to reuse them if I could.
Right, obviously, right? And he was like, that's what he's thinking. He's like, nope, we're starting back from, and I'm like, but a warehouse, let's say this is a warehouse that's empty. You're telling me I'm not allowed to have air conditioning? He's like, yes. He goes, I want everything gone. So we're tearing down the ACs. I have to go and, you know, pay thousands of dollars to get a crane to take it down and put it in the back parking lot, do all this stuff. But I'm thinking, all right, so I put in the back parking lot. I call him back. He shows back up. It can't be on the property. I'm like, so I can't even store anything in a warehouse, which warehouses are meant for storage, by the way, right? He says, no, I want it gone. So I have to go and get it out of there. I put it to some other area, you know, and like, just like, bro, it was crazy. It was like, you know, and so then, you know, at that point, you know, I had purchased with my partner a few properties out in the desert, and we were going to also build that out. And
that was the first one through the gate where they're like, you can do it out here in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. And so like, we got it first, and we're like, look, we really want to build some stuff from the ground up, from scratch, you know? And so we were already kind of in that process, and we were doing that. And basically, you know, my other partner who was, you know, one of the original partners, like I said, that was growing with, he bailed. He was like, you know what? Like you said, like most people are gone. He was like, peace, bro. It's your problem now. And so then, you know, I was talking to my partner in the other situation, the new stuff that we were doing. And he was like, no, I'll come in, bro. Let's do this together, you know? And the good part is, like I said, is that he is this crazy smart engineer, right? He's like, you know, who knows how to build stuff from scratch and do everything. So he's just like, look, we'll use that as the test facility to build out this like crazy facility. And we'll test all the equipment. We'll do stuff, and whatever we learn there, we'll apply to the stuff that we do out in the desert.
Smart.
And so I was like, yo, sign me up. Let's run it, bro. And also at the same time, I'm like, thank God I got somebody else in on me, because I was like over my head. I didn't know what I was doing, you know?
It feels good to tag team problems too sometimes.
100%,
where you're like, man,
bro.
This is a lot on one person.
Yeah, and especially when you're doing something you don't know what you're doing, man. Like, I didn't know how to build. I didn't know any of this stuff. And my whole thing was like, no, I'm just going to, you know, call a couple people up and I'm going to do this and it's going to happen. No, it's not. That's not how how it works, you know? And so then we, basically like went through the process. I made plans and like we did everything. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it right. We stripped the whole thing down to nothing. We redid the roof. We redid the parking lot. We like put up fences. Like my partner was like, we're not leaving any stone unturned. We're going to do this thing to the nines. Everything's going to be, 10 out of 10. And I was like, all right, run it. Let's, I'm taking your lead, bro. You're taking the lead. I'm following you, And so then, basically we started running. We did it. And again, first thing I call in, for the first inspection, just to look at everything after we had cleaned it up in the plans. And the first inspector walks in, who's an electrical inspector. He comes in and he wants to look at everything. And he comes in and he walks out and said, nice to meet you. He's like, huh. And I'm like, no, nice to meet you. And I put my hand out. He wouldn't shake my hand. I'm like, all right. He goes, I want to start off by letting you know, I think you people are bad people. And so here I am. This is a guy that's going to end up having to sign off on my stuff. The first thing he tells me is I'm a bad person, So in my head, I'm like, I open up to him and I say, hey, look, bro, I could get on the phone with 100 people that are going to tell you that I'm probably one of the best people that they know, man. And I'm going to keep doing whatever I have to get this done. We're doing the plans. We're doing all this stuff. I'm trying to do things right, man. Please just work with me, And so then, we started this process and it was funny. I'll never forget this thing because obviously, like you said, it was like the process was like literally like tormenting yourself. And, we're 21 times in, this guy's coming in just to get to start off the ground, right? Every time, hey man, this K is crooked. Oh, that F isn't right. You know what? That ashtray, you can't have that. It's got to go over there. So he was picking stuff and I'm like, you're the electrical inspector. Like, why are you pointing at stuff? Doesn't matter. He's like, that railing right there, that railing's off. I'm like, dude, you're an electrical inspector. Why are you calling this stuff out? You know what? That's right. You're right. I am an electrical inspector and then that railing is off. How about this? We're going to get the building department in. So he starts calling other departments in. And so it was just like, at some point it felt like, it was like I was trying to climb a mountain that I shouldn't have been climbing that mountain.
First Smoke family, no matter the guest, we're rocking raw and Elements papers. Whether it's the Elements king size wide, the raw fatties without the crease, so you still get the king size wide, but with unbleached and uncreased. Something we've been loving on the show is the raw king size blacks. And when we're lighting up, the Phoenix. This is awesome. Flintless residue, windscreen with a poker. No matter what products you like from Raw, you can check out genuineraw.com and that gets you to all their affiliate links to purchase these products direct from them to make sure they're raw authentic. Genuineraw.com, First Smoke of the Day sent you.
You know what's crazy, Ron? I've heard this story so many times from people all over the country, if not the world, where it's like, you're already up against it. It's already going to cost you an insane amount of money. It's something you have passion for. And then now the people from the government are trying their damnedest to just create as much drama in the like. It's just, I wonder what other industry sometimes, because I've heard this so many times from like guys where it's like, your name should be Relentless, not Elusive. Yeah. Like it's crazy, bro. But it's like, man, I don't think many other businesses go through these types of hurdles in this way, where it's like, no, the person who's granting you your business does not want you to have it. Yeah. You're like, wait, what? No, they make money off of it and it's good for society and we hire people. And they're like, nah, they do not want to see you win.
Yeah, it's weird because they do and they don't. They want the money from you that's going to come along with it, but they're going to just let you kind of go like, they're going to throw you in the water to the sharks and see if you make it out the water alive is what they're basically doing, And I mean, it sucks because, I would say that, there's good people along the way inside of the city and stuff and people that help because eventually you start to run into those people and they're just like, hey man, like, I heard many times where they're like, wow, you guys are the first to do this. Like, wow, you did this plan already. Oh, you did this. You did that. And I was like, look, like I said, because my partner's was straight edge on this stuff. You know what I mean? He's like, no, we're not cutting any corners. He's like, trust me, later on down the road, when they start pulling up stuff, because everybody was using this grandfathered term, he was like, they're going to come back and they're going to be like, do you have this? Do you have this? And do you have this? And we ended up having it.
Sure enough.
And so, we go through everything. And then basically, then at that point, it was just about, at the end, it was funny because.
How long did it take?
Bro, it took me 5 years, bro, to build that facility, bro.
I've heard a year and a half, 2 years.
5 years,
yeah.
bro.
Well,
Like insanity, bro. Insanity. And mind you, the thing was, keep in mind, the way that we were building it wasn't like the old days where, like you were saying, we were throwing up some plywood with some, this. It was like, we were also, while we were building it, we were because like when I went to my partner, because he's like, okay, look, I don't know how to grow. I don't know any of this. You got to tell me how we're going to get around this. And so when we started mapping the stuff out and, he's putting on the board all the stuff, he's like, okay, well, first rule, he's like, because I'd be like, what about these canna walls? What about this? And he'd be like, anything with the word canna, green, or any of it, I don't care for it. Because all it is somebody going to another industry like medical or refrigeration panel and this or this, that. And he's like, and applying it to this and putting a premium on it. He's like, we're going to basically source the best products for whatever it is. And then it became this thing where we were literally building our Ferrari. The tech side of my place is insane, bro. Like, it was funny because we had a workforce because his father had like a full workforce because they do, they own $500 million worth of real estate, medical office space. So they're always doing tenant improvements and stuff like that. So basically we, cherry picked this team out of there, and that was going to be our team to do all the building. We had the plans and we were going to manage everything because I was like, look, let's be hands-on. Let's focus on this. We started doing everything. And like I said, along the way, it was just crazy because like I said, he's a bougie guy. Like, if you've seen his house and like how he did it, he built it, the same way, but he was like every little detail where you're just like, you're walking in and you're just like, wait a second, bro. Like, and mind you, this is like just giving you an example, but it's like you're walking in and his door opens and you're like, how'd your door open? Oh, I got facial recognition. And I'm like, on your house? Like, you know what I mean? And then it's like, you start doing this stuff and you're just like, yo, bro, this guy's kind of crazy. Like, we need this, we need
a good
that
partner to have.
Oh, bro, it was insane, bro, because when we started doing it, bro, but then, like I said, it was just funny because, he'd come back because I was like, even when we got down towards the end, he's like, all right, bro, we need to put, 25 sensors in the room and put it in all these different locations so we don't have any hot spots or absent pockets that we don't get any readings. And I'm like, all right, bet it up. I'm like, cool. And I'm like, so which ones are we going to do? Are we doing like Arroyo or with, whatever? And he's like, bro, what did I tell you about this? I don't want to hear any of these names. These are blah, blah, blah. And they use these on the NASA spaceship and they're 0.01% accurate. And I'm like, yo, them shit sound fly, until you see the price on them. Then you're like, yo, what, bro? You said we need how many of these things? I'm like, bro, you want to spend $500,000 on sensors? I'm like, and he's like, bro, do you want to grow the best weed or not? And I'm just like, all right, bro. Like, fucking
put a battery in my back.
You know what I mean? I'm like, run it, bro. Like, so then it was just like one thing after the other where we're doing all this crazy stuff. And like I said, that's another reason why it took so long, because we were literally on this search. And again, like he said, test facility to build this thing that we were going to cookie cutter that model into everything that we do.
You're building for the future.
Yeah, it was originally what we were doing, because we're thinking, all right, look, let's get, 1,600 lights or whatever the number may be and just focus on literally doing something that nobody can do, which is having 1,600 lights that can be repetitive and consistent in the product that it produces. So producing 1,600 pounds of boutique flower, which is like, it doesn't exist, right? Because, and it was funny because it was like, the example is like, you can come over to my house and my mom's going to make you a cake, right? And you're going to be like, man, that cake is amazing. Hey, I'm getting married to my girl. I need 1,000 cakes. Let's tell your mom to cook the cakes and put them in a situation. Well, if we go to that wedding, the cakes are going to taste like shit. Because she can't make 1,000 cakes unless you put her in a commercial kitchen and you give her a team to help her and do all this stuff. But she's got to have the equipment. You know what I mean? She's got to have the setup to be able to do it. And so basically, that's what we did. We created the ultimate setup where the concept was going to be that now through automation and certain other things. And mind you have to, be hands-on with the plants because, raising plants is like raising little kids. You know what I mean? And we have thousands and thousands of kids that we're raising. And it's just about trying to, make sure all of them thrive. And it's a living thing, right? So you have to be hands-on. You have to do those extra things. But but doing as much as we could and controlling as many variables as we could so that now we can repetitively create the product and our variance is going to be smaller than everybody else's variance. Because think about it, how many times I'll go buy somebody else's brand where I might buy something and I'm like, bro, did you try this from them? Bro, best batch, the batch was sick. See it come up again and you go buy it and you go open it up and you pop it and you're like, all right, let's do it. We smoke it and you're like, this is not what I was remembering, and I think, so for me in this game, that was the goal, was consistency is king. You know what I mean?
Probably the hardest part of it for
1,000%
for anybody.
Too many moving variables,
cultivators,
man.
Hustlers, no matter what part of the business you're in, the consistency part's the hardest part.
Yeah.
I agree.
And at the end of the day too, it's like cannabis as a whole is like it's farming, right? And especially what we're doing is urban indoor farming, and farming's at the lowest point of the totem pole of advancement in technology. I mean, nobody wants to spend any money. They're still using tractors from 30 years ago to to do what they've been doing the whole time, and nothing ever changed. So, but in this thing, it was about, look, this is a high value crop that, we're trying to be the best, and to be the best, you have to really invest in yourself and invest in the equipment that you use to get the goals that you wanted. And I think that, when the legal market opened up, everybody was in a rush to try and we got to get in the market. All right, Lance, come on, bro. We got to throw some money. We got to get this place. We need to have everything running and be, good in 1 year. Otherwise, we're going to get fucking shut out of business. Well, no, you weren't even in the first inning with an out yet. You were just starting. We're in the third inning right now. I mean, there's a lot of miseducation. There's a lot of need for education. And there's a lot of stuff. It's like a lot of people don't even know what they want. It was like a lot of it's been about following trends and some of the stuff that's been out there, like the candy wave and stuff like that. But I think right now we're hitting that next phase later on where it starts to get more mature and more commercialized. But at the same time, now people are starting to look outside of the box. Well, you know what? It's cool that everybody says this is good, but I want to find something that I like. Well, where's a peach strain? Where's a orange strain? Where's this? Or where's, I'm looking for this type of gas. And so it's like a lot of people are going on this quest as a consumer to find what they like.
Yeah.
Because they never knew what they liked. You know what I mean? They only had what was in front of them, because when we wanted to access good fire product, there was only so many places we could get it from, right? And whatever they had was what we were taking, right? And so I think now to be able to give that diversity and put out a lot of different stuff and let people start figuring out what they want, And then, like I said, in the process, everything that's going on with what you're doing and stuff, where people are now getting educated more, they're learning more, they're learning about new brands, they're learning about, new things, and just allowing people to kind of see that and take it in and now make your own decisions. You know what I mean?
That's what's dope. And with Elusive, with what you're growing, because I'm so interested now with that facility and everything. I've always loved your branding. I mean, you did the jars where it's actually on the jar.
Yeah.
Some of the strains that were hitters for you, where things started to catch either over COVID or after COVID, what were some of the hits that you were like, man, this is something we put out that really started to catch?
Well, so I think that one of the things about that has been, and obviously we're chasing a moving target, right? Because what was hot, during COVID, like you said, and then there has been changeover, and eventually you find these ones that sneak through, right? Like the candy did, like Skittles did, and then they get their own legs and have a life of their own, and at that point they're gone. Where the other ones were created by what was in the market, but then it just didn't get those extra legs and basically died off, and everybody was looking for the next thing, right? So like COVID, it was like a lot of the things like biscottis, RS11, and all, and gelatos, and that type of thing, where it was like, they had that market, they had the access to it, and those were the leaders that were really putting that stuff out there. And then I just think that, again, as time keeps moving on, then it started being a candy dominated market, and that was even funny because, that I remember when candy started popping off, obviously, like, you know, the indoor grows and stuff were running it. But, you know, when I was going up north and talking to these people with like big farms, you know, and the farmers were like, man, I never grow that candy shit. Fuck that shit. Don't bring that shit up here, you know? And you're like, bro, candy's selling. Like, you should probably grow it. People are getting good tickets for this, you know? And it's like, fuck, I'd be dead if I grow that shit, you know? And then fast forward, now you go up there and they're like, man, I got LCG, I got red runs, pink runs, blue runs, white runs, green runs. You're like, what the fuck? I thought you don't grow candies. But they had to adapt to the market, right? And figured it out. It's just like, hey man, if you had done this a little bit ago, you probably would have been way better off, you know? And again, so for me, it was like, you know, watching these things. So like candy hit and had its wave. And then that's where I said it was just became, I felt like the market was so dominated with candy, which wasn't a bad thing because there was a lot of good candy out there. It's just that, like, you know, it got to the point where, like I said, I knew that it was going to change at some point and I wanted to be ahead of the curve. So I started just kind of looking and
what, pheno hunting?
Yeah,
and
bro. Well, it's funny because when we got into operation in that facility, bro, I did a 500 plant pheno hunt, like out the gate, you know, and my partner's like, what are we doing? We should be trying to like probably bring money in the door right now. You know what I mean? After we spent, you know, $6 million on this thing. And you're just like, bro, I'm like, bro, this is what the big guys did. They find the strain out the gate. If we do this, we're going to like check the boxes out. Nobody's going to done this before, you know? And so he's like, okay, cool. So, and like I said, the problem with it at that time was, you know, candy was so big and everything you heard when you showed somebody a pack was purple candy, purple candy, purple candy. And so I'm looking and, you know, but it's funny because the seeds we're popping aren't any like candy strains. You know what I mean? It was like a mix of stuff, but there was some stuff in there that
citrus.
Yeah. And just, bro, all kinds of stuff, bro. Cause I'm like, hey, man,
there is something to timing.
Yeah. Oh no. But well, also too, here's the thing, the timing for that was it was good timing to do what I was doing, but I probably should have been looking for a candy, did a candy hunt. And if I did that, I would have been golden. But the problem was I was trying to look outside the box and find something new. And then I was basing it on what I like, you know, and trying to put together what I like with this purple candy thing, so I ended up finding stuff in there that like I said, it's like, had I known what I know today, bro, there was like probably like 4 or 5 other things in that room that like they would have been the banger. You know what I mean? But because they were ugly, had no bag appeal and fucking, you know what I mean? I was like, kill them. Fuck it. Fuck those things. This one's pretty. I want this one, you know? And so it was like looking for this crazy bag appeal. It had purple color to it naturally. You didn't have to turn the room cold to pull the color out of it. It's just that the profile on it was like a grape jelly. You know what I mean? So to me, it was cool, you know, because I was like, man, and it's funny to me because this was when I was really learning, you know, like going out, I'm like, this is candy. It's just a grape candy. It reminded me, and it still does because we were running it for a little bit. It has a nose like grape Big League Chew.
We're here, we made it. The mecca of packaging, Slab Hub Los Angeles. First Smoke family, no matter what your demands and needs are, custom bags, designs, branding, logo, marketing, 3D imagery. Doesn't matter if it's jars or bags, they design everything in-house and produce it right here in Los Angeles. I'm right here on the cutting room floor of Slab Hub LA where your vision becomes reality. Whether it's custom Mylars, themed packaging, doesn't matter. They've always had me and Pack Gods covered, so they got you covered. Your First Smoke family. So use the code FSOTD and get hooked up. Right here in LA, they're designing the best packaging you've seen around the world. This is where we go. This is where you should go. FSOTD is the code to get you hooked up. Slab Hub to LA.
Now it would be great.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's funny because some growers, and depending upon how big your grow is, you'll be like, doesn't matter, anything fire I can grow in this. When you're running at 1600 lights, or when you have multiple things happening in multiple markets, it's like you get to a place where it's like, no, the market you do have to lean into what the market wants. Even if it's like, even like actors, they'll say like, do one for them and one for you. It's like, you do have to grow some stuff that like, yeah, and you can find those rare crossovers that you're like, this is fire and the market will love it. But sometimes it's like, yeah, dude, back in the day, you could just grow whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
Just whatever you want.
Well, I mean, it wasn't back then. It was, like I said, it was OG or a sour with the people that I had. Cause OG was it back then. So it was like you ran the OG. The cool part back then is it didn't matter who was growing the OG as long as it was the right strain, right? Now it's like, hey, yo, did Lance grow that shit or Ron grew that shit? You know what I mean? Like blah, blah, blah. So it's
they want to know what medium. They want to know if what nutrients.
Lance uses rock wool, bro. That shit don't taste
He's on
right.
LEDs,
you know?
bro.
Yeah, no, bro. He ain't even. So it's like you start to hear those little nuances where people pick that up, and then But yeah, so then basically after that, it was like we started running. I thought that was my baby, you know what I mean? And I was like, I can't wait to show people this. And so like, you know, we put it together, we got it in a room, we fucking had a few other phenos and we ran in, and then I mixed in some other stuff. And you know, also at that time too, again, because it was that facility's 200 lights, you know what I mean? So it was like, you know, in 30 light-ish rooms to maintain the quality. So we're putting in, filling up rooms, but we also had to like basically go around and chase some genetics from people. So, you know, I literally, this is one of the things, and you know, it's like, again, I know it's a business, but like, bro, going to these commercial like nurseries and trying to pick up something and thinking that like, you know, they're going to help you out, bro. Like if that's what you're doing, bro, I feel bad for you, because, you know, you're going to pick up stuff like, bro, I picked up stuff with, you know, HLVD, because we didn't even know what that was at the time until afterwards. We had all these problems, strains where it's like, you know, someone's pitching to you where, again, based off of what they like, oh, bro, this strain, bro, you're going to love it, bro. This is my favorite strain here. And then you grow it and nobody wants to buy it. You know what I mean? So again, it was like all these messed up things and just trying to figure that out. And eventually, like, you know, fast forward to today, you know, or more recently was like I said, when we got into the thing with the Z and the Z started popping off, it was just like, you know what, that I'm noticing what, you know, the comments that everybody said, I took in the feedback, and it was just like, let's find, you know, Z dominant strains. And again, when I say that, I don't mean about the profile. I mean that what it brings out from the flower and helps express from the flower. And so then it was like, we started to chase that. We went through and started weeding that stuff out. And then now it's crazy because the menu that we have right now ended up being compiled. And this was the last part of the equation for me. Okay. So like, obviously we had the facility built where I know I can consistently produce the best product. And then we had tried the pheno hunt and did the stuff. But then, like I said, I ended up learning that the stuff I was picking, nobody cares what I think is it or not. Right. And then basically now we start chasing it. I linked up with Bobby. Right. And then Bobby started running, you know, the Z, and the zebras started going crazy. And then, like I said, it was like, well, what else we got? But we need something like this. And, you know, we started to, you know, just start to hunt for stuff and go around. And then it just basically became one of two things. You're either going around figuring out, because like I said, I'm in tune with the streets and what people are saying. I'm looking for all the strains that somebody told me sold for $1,000 or $600 or $800 an ounce, right? And I'm figuring out who I know and how I can make something happen and how much I have to pay them. You know what I'm saying? And then it was basically like, boom, get it. So you start compiling the genetics and getting the stuff. And then, you know, once we really started going into it, you know, and like I said, because Bobby's like, well, obviously we can go out and buy these things and find these things. And, you know, I already said that because that was part of my plan. And then, you know, Pax to the Future was like, hey, man, let's start like looking for some genetics, you know what I mean? And like hitting up some of the you know, people, the breeders and stuff like that. And I was like, you know, all right, let's look at some of these people and like figure it out. And then he told Bobby the same thing. And so Bobby's like, start setting up meetings, you know, and Bobby starts posting and saying like, genetics, get as many breeders in here. And so literally we went on this like week after week run of like, yo, anybody and everybody who makes a seed was like at the table with us having conversations, you know? And it was just cool to kind of see what everybody kept showing us, because they're like, all right, well, look, I got this. And then basically, you know, we came up on Surefire. So Pax sets up a meeting with Jamie. Jamie pulls up, and basically we sit down with them, and you know, and I'll never forget it, because you were talking about the pheno stuff that you're doing with Joe earlier, right?
Yeah, just doing cool shit with homies.
Yeah, but then also the matching, where like you saw what the numbers you said were the numbers he said, you know, and so you're like, oh shit, we found what we're looking for, right? And so, you know, same concept. We got Surefire lines up the jars for Bobby, and I had shown up a little bit late, and Bobby had already gone through. So Bobby's like, I already know what I want. He's like, line them up for him. So, we lined them up, and I can't remember exactly how many it was, but I feel like it was like 13 strains in front of me in jars. So, it's like open one jar, like, yeah, I'm good on this one. Go to the next one. And mind you, we had already been seeing so many people, and there'd been so much disappointment, at least for what we were looking for, where I was already kind of going in where I was just like, man, this is whatever, bro. I don't even know who this guy is really. Like, I've heard of him, but like, I don't know him like that, And then of course I come up to this one, and I'm like, yo, what? I don't even need to look at the rest of these, whatever this one is, whatever this is. And, Bobby's like, what's on the jar? And I'm like, 19. And he's like, yeah, that's the one. And I was like, all right, cool. Let me try and go through. I went through the rest of it. There was one other strain that I was trying to find another one just so I could have two on the table at this point, because when I smelled the other one, I already knew this one, whatever the fuck this one was it, So we get the other one, we do it, and then, smoked it. But, after we went, it was funny because I remember the first time he was there. So then I think I had to leave for a phone call, or it was like something like I had to go make this phone call outside. I come back inside, and I'm like, all right, bro, let's smoke it. Like, where is it? Bobby's like, I smoked it all. And I was like, this motherfucker. I was like, bro, I didn't even get to try it. He's like, don't worry, bro. He's going to bring more down like pretty soon. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, bro, that's fucking crazy, bro. So then, we
had that cut though. We need to put that in production. You're like, wait, hold on.
So I'm like, so then, Jamie comes back down, brings it. I smoke it, bro. It was like, and everything that we thought it was, and then, at the end.
Fire selected a really dope, I didn't know this. I thought he reversed the Surebanger 22, but then he said, no, I selected a male of the original Surebanger hunt. Yeah. And I used that. And that's what really spun me, because I'm going, that's why, because at the time I kept saying to myself, damn, Surebanger's better in crosses than it is by itself. Yeah. Because everything I was having out of his camp, I'm going, fuck, this is smoking better than the original Surebanger. Yeah. Because of what it was adding. It was all this other.
And we were talking about the Z, the way the Z makes. Yeah, 100%.
And so that's what I started spinning out. And then when I finally got to sit down with him, he was like, no, I selected a male. And I'm going, wait, what? And he's like, and I just think enough people don't realize that about what you're talking about, that original hunt. Yeah. It's a male selected Surebanger times now. Yeah. All that stuff he's working on.
Yeah. And it was crazy because that strain is so complex. Like it was funny because you're smelling the jar and you're like, literally like your mind is blown. Cause I'm like, what am I smelling right now? I'm like, I smell blueberries. I smell a little bit of lemon. I smell like some crazy like cookie gas out of this. Like, and then there was like 3 other things that I can't even put a finger on. And then it was like, so it was like you were seeing that. And then, like I said, and then it was even crazier when you're smoking it, because one of the things about it is that it's like the first time where like I had smoked a strain where it like morphed. And so like a lot of times you might smoke a strain, but it dies out. That's different. It has its taste that it has, and then it starts to die out. And obviously the goal is to get the same taste all the way through the joint and it doesn't die out. But this strain was doing some shit where like you're taking a couple of hits and you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like lemon up. And but then you're like smoking a couple more and you're like, whoa, there's that blueberry from the Surebanger. There's no more lemon. And then like you smoke a little bit more and then you're like, yo, this shit tastes like cookies now. Like, so then it was just weird that it was like, it was doing that for me, and I'm sure maybe some other people have found strains similar to that. I don't know if they have. I just know that this was the most complex strain that I'd ever like dealt with, from the nose that it provided all the way through to like, how it smoked. And then, Bobby ends up trying to negotiate with Surefire, and so and obviously Jamie's like, I was gonna build my brand off this thing, and I'm like,
he's like, which Pheno? Oh yeah, that one, that was my keeper, bro. Yeah, that's like $100,000 for that. Yeah, you're like, hold on, bro. Were you gonna say that before me or?
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, bro. So then, because I'm talking to Bobby. Bobby's like, all right, what are you thinking? I'm like, all right, bro. If it's like 30 bands, bro, it's probably worth it. And I feel like that's pretty cool to like like, get a cut for that. And he's like, oh, all right. And then obviously he calls him up. He's like, I want 50 bands. And I'm like, 50 bands, bro? I was like, and then Bobby's like, well, it's only 25 a piece if we split it. And I'm like, yo, bro, you trying to pay 50 bands for something that's unproven, bro? You on your own, bro. Like, I was like, it'd be something if it was a strain, again, that I know that the second we start putting it to market, we're going to be able to capitalize and make our money back. But like, to do it this way, bro, like, this is feast or famine, bro. It's, yeah, exactly, gambling. You're either going to hit it or you're not going to hit it. And so, but I did think that it was the one. It was just like, getting everybody to believe it, because I'd already been scarred from showing people what I already thought was the one wasn't. And so, a few times, right? Like I've already told you. And so then we go ahead and we started running it. And then, bro, we hit the streets with that thing. And bro, it just, I don't know, it's funny because it's like, a lot of times when good things happen, it's like not necessarily all the planning and everything. It's just a perfect storm. You know what I mean? And mind you, we did the right things in hindsight now. You know what I mean? And Bobby, especially, with what he does with his marketing and all that stuff. And I feel like we really built a cool story. And again, was that, paid a lot for the cut, gambled on it to take the chance, believed in ourselves, in our ability to do everything, and to like really come to the table and then show people that like, yo, this is it. And then having it being received the way that it has been and everything. And, I got DMs all the time from people, bro, I'm going to be thinking about this strain for the next 10 years of my life. Like, it's crazy that you did this to me, and I'm like, damn, thank you, bro. Like, and they're just like, I just want you to know that, like, I respect what you do, and, it's really cool. And so, I guess like we went through that whole process and everything worked out, and
what do you think of that model? Because you see that more with breeders now. It used to be like, I'll license this strain to you. I need this much per pack. Now you're seeing the model because of like the relationships are tough to work out, and am I getting paid on mediums and smalls, or using the branding on cards? So now you see them go, I want 25, 30 grand or 50 grand or whatever it is, or 2,000, whatever they think that they can get for it, that also where they are in their journey as a breeder. What do you think of those models though? Because it's changed. That like 5 to 10 years ago, you would see them just license genetics or collab or figure out how. Now it's almost like breeders that are really good, like let's say a seed junkie or something. They're almost like, oh, that pheno. Okay, let's come up with a number.
Yeah.
But then the weird thing is, well, let's talk about that. The second part of that is, I don't ever trust breeders that they're going to kill the mom.
100%.
So even if you pay $100,000 for a strain and the agreement is like, now this is ours, please don't let this out. So even if they say they're going to kill it, I don't ever believe they're going to. I know, man. So there is this weird line to walk where like, yeah, you're going to pay a lot for this genetic that could change the game for you, or at least be a good stepping stone. And then but that breeder is also going to always have that genetic. And if it gets real popular, there's always an interesting relationship that evolves into the breeder wants to use it to further their name and work, because if it is that special, maybe they originally didn't see it, now they see it.
Yeah, man.
The second part of that is, we have something special we paid all this money for, let us capitalize on it. It's just such a tough relationship building, but we see it evolving.
Yeah.
What do you think about how it's evolved?
I mean, I just think that you have to keep it as clean as possible. And that's why you just had to pay them out and pay them the number that it is and let them get it. Cause I mean, we talked about this on the Pheno episode and stuff like that, is that, these guys that are doing the breeding and the hunting, they're in the worst part of it. Cultivation is even the worst part too, like I said, overall, because there's all these other things that come along with it. But especially the breeding guys, it's like, it's really hard, because remember, you're growing a bunch of stuff that like a majority of it's going to be trash, and you're hoping that you can sell some of it to recoup some costs. But the reality is that just somebody being nice to buy it off of you if it's not it, right?
So true, bro.
And so, like for me, I'm like, you just got to kind of pay, because like some of these other arrangements and stuff like that, it's just too hard. Like, even like you said, you're like, oh yeah, how do you know they're not going to keep the mom? Well, how do you know that the person you gave the cut to that's growing it for you and licensing it, if they say they're not growing anymore, how do you know they didn't keep the cut? And you know what I mean? And then there's all these other things. So I think it's better just to keep things clean. Pay them out, let them get their bread, bro. They like I said, obviously these hunts and all this stuff cost a lot of money. And like I said, they're just, they have to keep doing it over and over again. And you have to help power them and give them, what they need to do that, You know
what's interesting, and it's something that throughout your whole story keeps coming up, is your ability to build relationships.
Oh yeah, rapport. 100%. And it's funny because Bobby said this the other day to me, and it was funny because Bobby was like, he's like, bro, I want to talk to you about something. And he was like, I just want to make sure that we're cool and like everything keeps going. And I was like, bro, of course everything's cool, And he was like, nah, but I just want you to know. He was like, I'm like man enough to say this, bro. He's like, like, obviously my brand does what it does and I'm super successful and I can find other avenues, but he's like, I just like working with you, and you've never used me for clout like other people have. Like if other people were in that situation, it's always about like trying to figure out how they can get in front of me and wave their hand and like be like, I'm the new guy and all this other stuff. And he's like, you've kind of like let me do my thing and you do your thing. And like, we don't butt heads. And I was like, honestly, there were a lot of us doing stuff together was luck, bro. Because think about it, he was putting my name on a jar, and it was funny because one time he hit me up and he was like, bro, you selling to my people, and and I was like, Bobby, I swear to you, bro, I'm not selling to your people, bro. My audience is different. Like actually a lot of my people, they look at you, they're like, I'm not buying from the villain, like the guy that talks a lot, that does everything and this and that. I'm buying from you. And it's like, and then his people are his people, and they stuck by his side because of the brand, that he's built. And so I was like, bro, you got a lot of brand loyalty. People are following you. Your people are still buying from you. There's been no change on that. And my people have always been my people. It's just that like, we're both elevating ourselves together in this whole thing. And like I said, we got lucky because a lot of times there could have been bumping heads. There could have been, trying to steal this, trying to do that, do this.
Before it even gets to the bag.
Yeah, bro.
People want to fuck the bag up
Too
before
much
the bag.
short-term thinking in this game,
Yes, bro.
Like people always like, again, like I said, how they were rushing into business thinking that they had to have something built in a year and this business that they were going to run. And, all across the line, everybody's thinking about how fast they could get there. And look at all the years that I've spent to get where I am right now, bro. We've been eating shit for a long time, bro. Don't let, like obviously don't get it twisted. Like we do good, bro.
Life's good.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I'm in a good place right now, but
you get dirty in the trench.
Oh no, bro. Yeah. Like there was times where, I was actually another thing when we started building the stuff and I was doing it, it was funny because I'm not going to say his name, but he's respected in the business and he was already doing his thing. He had like a grow up in Salinas because again, that was a place that like allowed the licensing first. And I talked to him at one point and I said to him, I said, hey bro, I said, you're doing it, and everybody was talking about how his stuff was popping. I said, bro, give me some advice for somebody that's getting into this legal thing and I'm going to go down this path. Like, can you give me some advice? And he goes, yeah, bro, I'm going to give you the best advice anybody could ever get you, And I'm like, oh yeah, fuck yeah. So what is it, bro? And he's like, don't fucking do it. He was like, I was like, what do you mean don't do it? He's like, don't fucking do it, bro. What you're trying to do right now, just stop, bro. Save your money, bro. Put it into something else. You don't want to do it, bro. It's not going to be worth it. And I was like, remember thinking that, again, the one of the reoccurring themes you're going to have on here, like you were talking about Relentless, was like, second he told me that shit, I'm like, oh, bitch, I'm going to show you what's up, bro. I'm going to do this. Like, but like now looking back, I'm like, damn, he was kind of fucking right when he told me that he was actually trying to save me. Like, like
he knew if you were going to push through that, I feel like sometimes barriers like that are meant to like weed out or filter out the people that are kind of halfway in or kind of not in, like, because I keep thinking Relentless because it took that to get here.
Yeah.
So of course you're going to keep choosing that. Yeah. You end up making so many lefts of like, no, that's not going to be the end, that it just becomes the normal now.
Yeah. No,
someone's like,
yes.
You can't do that.
If somebody told you no, it's yes now. You know what I mean?
And it really, I feel like that in your story, bro. It should be Elusive. Your other brand's going to be Relentless, bro.
Yeah. Maybe
your Smalls brand.
Let's do it, baby.
but it's true. And I want to talk about flashback hunting seeds now and hunting seeds then.
Yeah.
what you learned hunting seeds and what you're going after from that first hunt versus now when you go to pop some seeds. What's your thought process? Has it changed a lot?
Oh yeah, like I said, now actually the funniest part for me is I'm actually looking for the weed that's ugly. Like, you know what I mean? I'm literally looking at it. I'm like, if it's pretty, I'm like, bro, that shit ain't gonna smoke right. I'm like, they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm telling you, every time I see a pretty strain, it don't fucking smoke right. You know what I mean? Like, and again, candy was probably one of the exceptions. And then it's like, but other times, like you'll like do something like that grape one I told you I found was like, again, great terps, like it does certain things. It just like when it has a lot of trichomes and stuff on it, I just find that sometimes it'll burn a little bit hotter, and it just has that little bit where I was like, man, it's especially now smoking the newer stuff. I'm learning that, like, you know what? I learned that, you know, this is not what I need to be looking for. There's certain characteristics, you know, certain structure, and so basically, you know, I've gone through so much and learned so much from the point when we first started that hunt and to where we are now, because now I've taken all these lessons that I learned, bro, like countless lessons from all the times I showed up to show somebody packs and got shit on and told to leave, you know what I mean? Got insulted, you know, and felt so, you know, or at least felt like I was insulted based on what they were telling me. And all the way till now, where it's like, now it's been kind of crazy because we've shown people that we can bring new shit to the market now. So, cause we've been having all the strains, and it's been like, now it's like, I'm finally at that point and I feel like I'm getting there, but I'm not 100% where it's like, now people are like, yeah, show me what you got now. And so now it's different, because now you're hunting, looking for these things that I've already learned the characteristics. And the way I learned the characteristics, that was basically like this. I got 4 guys, okay, that are these are the guys, okay? If I go to them to QC a pack, if one of them likes it, it's a 10% chance that other people like it, okay? If 2 of them like it, it's a 25% chance. If 3 of them like it, it's a 50-50. If all 4 of them like it, it don't matter who I'm showing the pack to, they're going to say they want to buy it, and how many are there behind it. You know what I mean? They're literally trying to buy it out. So, and it was funny because I ended up figuring this out, because even like, let's say like, you know, XYZ has a brand and I give them the strain, and they were the only one that liked this strain, right? And then they put it out. Oh, bro, I love this strain. Oh, my people love this strain. And they run it the first time. And I'm like, okay, cool. But these guys didn't like it, right? The next time they drop it, oh man, it sold a little slower than the first time. Third time, they're like, hey man, I think I need to cut this one off the menu. I already knew that, because from me watching what was this had already happened with each one of them as they were picking different phenos, you know? And then once I got to the point, like I said, where it was like, oh shit, I'm now picking strains based on the criteria that I've learned from all this countless knowledge that I've put together, that now when I'm pulling up on somebody, I'm getting 4 out of 4s. Like 80% of the time. You know what I'm saying? Dialed. And then, so then now when the 4s are hitting, I already know everybody wants it, because literally I can go and show it to anybody and they're going to tell me this is it. And so like now like I said, I've got to that point where when we're pheno hunting, now it's more about like, all right, we're not exactly looking for any one thing in particular. Let's just start looking outside of the box and looking for these outliers that still have that familiarity of the initial stuff that we talked about, but then are bringing these new aspects where people are now getting to experience something that they're like, yo, I didn't even know this was a thing.
I love that, man. I love that. It's like going into it open-minded, but also having in the back of your head, if we can get something like this, or this, it's game time. Yeah. And then just seeing whatever comes up, because you don't know. These days with the complex terps, you're starting to see stuff where you're like, wow, I've really never smelled this before. 100%. Or this is kind of like this, but way different from that. And I'm starting to, you know, once in a while you get stuff where you're like, this doesn't remind me of anything I've had before. Yep. And that's crazy to say after 20 years of seeing thousands of strains for both. And it's even crazy to think, because so much of the genetics that are popping around is a bunch of inbred stuff, because everybody's breeding the same stuff to the same stuff. So it's like, you're thinking like, oh, we're trying to find something outside of the box, but where everybody's breeding with the same gear. It's just got different names and like, you know, different variations of it, you know? Well, let me ask you that then. Are you a big fan, or do you have an opinion on being open about like what the genetics are, because we see a lot of guys, and as we get older, I realize they lied about what the cross was just to keep people off their ass about like, oh, they're going to rehunt the same thing and then try to get up underneath there and be like, I got the same thing as him, or it's his sister now, or it's his brother.
Yep.
And I see a lot of guys now, you see them, you almost feel compelled where people want to know the genetics. They want to know who the seeds were from, how you grew it. But then you see some guys, and I like the name Elusive, kind of being like, nah, just judge it on how good the weed is. Yeah. And it's this weird thing of where people feel a different way about both.
Yeah, I guess because obviously, like you said, there's these different parties. Because obviously, on one side, 100%, it's nice to give somebody credit if they were behind creating on that work or had a piece of being in the creation of it. So it's like, for me, that's the main reason why somebody would want to do that. But then I just think it's tough because, like you said, you don't want people comparing one thing to the other. Oh, well, Lance got this version of that and this got it. It's more like, look, I'm trying to create what's best for my brand and create it what you identify with my brand. And I also think that, like, again, that's why you're looking for certain nuances. I tend to like to really find stuff with like fruit like aspects in it. I put that in the names of a lot of my strains, but also that's the stuff that I look for because I feel like that stuff to me is the most terpy stuff, especially even when you're getting rosins and stuff like that. Like it's the most terpy stuff. And so I just try to focus on like kind of going down that range and basically just opening it up where it's like, all right, like, it doesn't matter what fruit smell it is, as long as it has a little bit of a fruit smell in it. And then it has a loud nose and mouth stain and all this other stuff. Like, let's give it a shot. And like I said, I just feel like it's funny because stuff is being well received. Like even one of the other problems of telling people genetics is that people have been, again, brainwashed into what everybody says about something. So like you can say a strain, like if you say Oreos, bro, and you tell me, hey, bro, this is Oreos or something, I'll be like, hey, go put that pack over there. We don't even need to look at that one. What else you got? You got something else?
Ice cream cake's another one.
Oh yeah, exactly. You got Purple ice cream cake. Hey man, put that one over there too. Purple punch, all that stuff. And mind you, like you were saying, like, cause I know that like you love purple punch. The purple punch, you had a way with that shit. You know what I mean?
When we first had it from the village, when we first got it the first time, like we were at the Cup or whatever, buddy had a jar of it and we're linking up with the village symbiotic and he pulls open a jar of that. I was like, holy shit. Yep. But it was a time and a place too. And you can look back and be like, what was I wearing in that photo? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But like, I'm a big fan, Ron, of like the challenge of like, I'll outgrow that. Like I'll put a strain so well grown in front of you that you're like, man, I normally don't like this.
Yes, bro.
But this shit right here.
That's it right there.
And I used to hear that and I would get off on that a little bit with certain people. So I would run a few things where I was like, yeah, but you never seen it like this before, have 100%. You? Because you bring out this nuance and you cure it right. And you're just, and so that's where I felt like with that, where I was like, man, when it's a 10 batch of that, for me, it was like at this time and place, bro, people are loving this shit. But again, like looking back, it's like, what's funny is if you came up with something crazy name and you put it to a chem and you improve upon the things that it was lacking, but then have a little bit of something twangy behind it, people would be like, oh yeah, dude, because the wave was so big that there is an impression back there, good or bad. And if you touch into the good part, I think that's a tastemaker though. That's why I like watching brands like you and some of these guys, because you're going like, you're having to give them something that reminisces their old, but then you see guys that break the mold. Here and there, you see the break the mold stuff and you're going, oh damn, that's a new wave.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I was telling you is that you give them the familiarity first and then they start listening to, because if I tell you go to a restaurant and you're like, hey, bro, I went to that restaurant. I love it. Oh, try this one. And then you go try it now and you're like, bro, it's just like the other one. You're right. That's a fire ass restaurant. I'm glad you put me on. But the first one had to go down first before the second one went down, right? And
what's the cream smoothie strain, bro? The one that's like lemon up cream smoothie or something?
Oh, that's Caviar lemons.
Fire.
Yo, bro, stupid, bro. And the crazy part is that's from Fire Farmer, which he gives really easy access to get it. So like anybody could have got that strain. But again, it was like a funny thing when he came in and he was showing us stuff. It was like, he was really on like, yo, check out my Red Hots. Like, trust me, I think this is going to be the next wave. It's like a, like a cinnamon biscotti-ish thing, And it was like, okay, cool. looking at it, and I basically, and he was like, look, this is the most expensive thing I got right now, like blah, blah. I said, all right, I'll run it. You know what I mean? But then I was like, look, but I want one more thing from you. And he's like, well, what do you want? What about this? I said, no, bro. Let me ask you a question. And I said, what's your most Z forward or lemon tree type of strain that, you know, is like, has those aspects of that strain, but is like new age. And he was like, bro, you know, a lot of people, they're not really asking for it, but I got, you know, this lemon tree times cream smoothie, you know, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, but what is it like? And he's like, it's like a it's like a lemony Skittles that like has some creaminess to it and like whatever. And he goes, I smoke it every morning. I start my morning off with it, with that and a cup of coffee. So I was like, bro, that's what I want, bro. And, you know, and it was just like, he was like, all right, cool. You know, so we picked it up. We ran both of the strains, you know, and the Red House is cool. Like, you know, it's not for everybody, but it was like, it's not super terpy, but it has like a cool exhale on it because it's like this, like I said, a cinnamon spice, but Scotty.
And that's the other one?
Yeah, that was the other one, right? But when I smoked with my team, we broke out the, you know, the lemon and we rolled it up. And by the way, when it was in the bag, I was like, everybody was already like, you know, eyes rolling back in the head like, what is this, you know? And my first thought was, that was the cheapest, best thing I ever bought. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, holy shit. Like, we literally found a diamond in the rough, you know? And
fire. Someone handed me a jar of it. I rolled it up and I was like, damn. And then I went to the homies and he had 6 different joints rolled up. He didn't tell me what was what.
Yeah.
And we smoked, we lit all of them. And we went one by one and put them in order of what we thought best to work. And it was right at the top. And he was like, oh yeah, this is that one. And I was like, yo, I had to ask him. I said, ask him what the genetics are on this shit. This shit's smoking, bro.
Yep.
Beautiful cut, bro.
Yeah.
And you grow it beautifully. Like,
and it smells like it tastes. Yeah. And everything. Cause even I picked it up. A couple other growers had done, picked up the strain from them. And then, we just compared and it was like, we were buying it and we're like, man, this is crazy because, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, all the hard work and everything we're doing, I really feel like if we go cut to cut, like, and I go up against somebody, and mind you, it might not be magic, you know, it's just like I said, I have a better vehicle. You know what I mean? And we're really on top of our stuff and our team is really good. So it's like, we're really dialed in on that front. And so, you know, I'm not saying that somebody can't have a run that's better than us. Cause obviously like sometimes that just happens. But at the end of the day, when we were all smoking it, I was just like, yo, right after I smoked, I said, this is my favorite strain. I was like, right now, this is my favorite strain. I actually might like this more than the Gus, me personally. You know what I mean? And so, but I was like, obviously the Gus is right there. And I like that profile for it. You know, those certain reasons I named earlier, but this was just like, you know, kind of like what the whole reason why people smoke Skittles is that you can smoke that strain all day long and not feel like you smoked too much. You know, I feel like on my end, the Gus was more of a, like, it's that rich dessert that you're like, God, like, I didn't know something could be this flavorful and taste that good, but you don't want to be smoking it all the time. You know what I mean? Just because it's so flavorful, you know, and it kind of detracts away over the long run what it is. It's definitely a delicatessen. You know what I mean? Something that you really want to enjoy. The lemon is just the staple to me, like where you could sit around and smoke it. It's right in there with Skittles. The flavor profile matches, and you know, the nose matches the taste and the this and the that. And again, that one took it to the 4 people. All 4 of them said it was a banger. So even when I would see other people who were like, you know, somebody might look at it and be like, bro, I don't know, man. This is like kind of this lemon, this, that. I'm like, hey, bro, smoke it real quick and then tell me. And then they're like, damn, I mean, I really like it. I just don't know if my people are going to like it. I'm like, take it out to your people, drop the shit, and then tell me what the fuck you got to say.
It'll be okay.
You know what I mean? And then they're coming back. They're like, bro, that fucking lemon, I don't even know that. I'm like, hey, bro, now you in the back of the line, bro. Everybody else already bought onto this one. You know what I mean? So like,
shit sold out, dog. Man, that's a banger. I want to talk about the cherries.
Cherries is fire.
It's sour cherries or sour cherries?
It's sour cherries. And it was funny because when we picked it up, I thought I was getting the Zowers cut. So I thought I was getting the Hall of Flame cut of Zowers and, through somebody, and we had like put it in. And that one's a funny story too, Lance. It was like, and you'll appreciate this because obviously, like I said, you've grown weed before. So there was some sort of a mess up. Then we get the cut, and the grower guy that I was getting the cut from, I was like, look, I need some cuts. And then basically he was like, all right, I'm going to give you this many. And then like there was like some sort of mess up and some plants died. So I was like, bro, I need a ton of these things. So we ended up like filling up like half a room of one strain, which I never do. You know what I mean? And we have half a room. So I'm like already in my head knowing that I'm going to be getting like, 30, 35 pounds of this strain. And we're like 53 days in, and I'm looking at this shit, and I'm like walking in there and I'm like, yo, whoever's idea this was to fucking get this strain, like, I'm so mad. They're like, it was your idea. And I'm like, no, but this isn't like, no, this is fucking, whatever. And it was just like, I was just like, bro, this is horrible. And then I'm joking.
Just a bunch of green weed or what? What were you?
It just had that sour structure on it. So that already is a throw off. And again, from normal conversations with the people that are buying the stuff, like someone like a Bobby or this or that, cause like, again, the candy has to be like a round nug, quarter size, look like this. Yes. And here you go. You got this thing looking like some crazy mangled Christmas tree. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm looking at it, and that's the first part. Then the second part is you're walking into the room, and like you walk into the room with the Gus, the Skittles, the lemon, bro. You're like, bro, smell this room. I'm walking into this room, it smelled like nothing. And I'm like, bro, it don't even got a smell. And then we got half the room is filled up with this. And I'm like, who's going to sell this? I'm not selling this, And it's like, so I immediately do, knee-jerk, stupid reaction, kill the fucking mom, kill it. We're not fucking running this thing, but we got to come in some other rooms. I don't give a fuck. Put the other cuts in there, start killing everything off, doing everything. And then next thing I know, like the next like week and a half on this thing, it turned into like something absolutely insane, right? So I'm like, hey, bro, don't kill the fucking mom. They're like, don't kill him. You already told us to kill it, bro. We killed that shit like 7 days ago. No, it's gone. And it's not in the rooms. We killed all the clones. We killed all the stuff. I'm like, fuck. All right, well, whatever. Let's see what happens. Take it down, dry it, and then, immediately, again, another 4 out of 4 strain that every single person saw it was like, bro, this shit smells like cherries, but it smells like a sour cherry. And, meanwhile, while I was telling everybody, I'm like, yeah, isn't this what the Zowers is like? From Hall of Flame. And they're like, no, this is a little bit different. There's something different about it. And I was like, but it looks kind of the same, but theirs did have more purple, and this one is more of a green with like a tinge of like color. And anyway, afterwards, I'm talking to the grower guy and I'm like, hey, bro, so wait, this is Blue Nerds times, sour diesel? And he was like, or whatever, what is it? He's like, no, man, this is sour diesel times watermelon Skittles. And I was like, what? And he was like, so I was like going around. I had to go around and like backtrack and tell everybody because people were thinking it was one thing. I'm like, no, bro, it's actually this. And they're like, oh, that's why it's a little bit different, And then, but yeah, that was another one. We put it out there, and like that was one of the, I don't know if that might have been the third one that, like I said, where it was started being it was hitting every mark with every one of the, the Mount Rushmore guys, I call them, you know what I mean? The ones where it's like, if any one of them pick it, this is it, And so it started to be where it was like, okay, boom, this one's a hit. And so that's literally been our model, is running some stuff, only putting it out to our market if it hits those marks, and all 4, even though I'm doing it to my market now, I still get their sign off on stuff to get them to try it, And so like basically just being building off of that. So it's been like, having them in the background, and again, the rest of my team, and especially too, cause my team, Pax and Mo, they're like, and a few other people that are in the mix, they try the stuff, and they've learned like sponges off of what we've been doing. So then they're looking for the same thing. And I'm like, what are you picking up? What is this? You know, it's like, it's funny because like with Pax, he always comes up with like the craziest shit. Cause I'll be like, I can't put my finger on this. What is that smell? And he'll be like, it's a eucalyptus oil and like something. You're just like, yo, that is what it smells like. You know what I mean? Like, fuck, that was the smell from the spa from the other day when I was getting my back rubbed.
What do you think right now? What do you think the streets want? Like, what are they asking for right now? What do you think the majority of people wanting to smoke something right now?
I mean, I think people just want to try. I think now people are getting more open to trying new stuff. So it's not so much like there's any one thing. It's just about, like you said, finding something really cool that's good, you know? And again, us being able to kind of put it out there in the way where it's like, look, like you said, look, you might not like this terp, but try this, please, just try this. Because even with the blood oranges, that's been the same case, bro. Because I literally have had people telling me where they're like, bro, I fucking hate orange terps. And I'm like, bro, smell this. They're like, oh, damn, this is a different orange terp. Oh, because usually when I'm seeing it, I'm thinking, you know, orange from Tangy. And I'm like, no, this is like sweet, sugary orange. You know what I mean? And that's why I call it blood orange, because it reminds me of like one of those Pellegrino sodas where it's got like just a sweet orange with a little bit of tang. And so it's like, you know, check this out. And then, you know, later on, again, same thing where they're just like, bro, what the fuck? You're right. I love this orange terp. I didn't even know I like orange terps till I had this one. And you're just like, cool. So I think that right now, I think people are open, bro. I don't think there's any one thing. And I think there is an avenue for people to now I think we're breaking down walls that were there before, that now it's kind of open. So, you know, you start hitting it. And then like the problem, which again goes back to one thing you brought up, we were bringing up earlier about the genetics, is that you don't necessarily want to tell somebody what the genetics is, because then they have that predetermined bias based off of their past experiences. So you drop that name and all of a sudden this one is a no-go. And so it's like, that's where I think now it's about kind of like wiping off the board and starting with a clean slate, and then just putting together what you can put together, putting your best foot forward, and allowing people to figure out what they like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. Do you have any position on LED versus HPS or cocoa rockwool growing mediums? Is something, because you've run a lot of strains probably a few different ways now.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think LEDs are the best. And I think, you know, the one thing I guess I am wondering, but I believe in it. But again, it's like one of those things at the end of the day, you know, we're not talking about grow science, you know, we're talking about like real science, right? And I don't know, you know, some of these things I don't know the answers to yet. Obviously you can pick people's brains, but just like picking a strain, somebody's going to give you their opinion on like what's what.
Opinion, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I personally, we grow in cocoa. I believe that cocoa produces a better product from my personal experience. But I also think that, like I said, we took it a notch further. You know, we do synganics. We, you know, we include inoculants, you know, spores, you know, microbials, like positive other things. So basically we're doing like what I like to call simulated living soil. You know, we do tea still once a week and stuff like that, like a special brew and stuff like that. So we're trying to do it again, even growing in a hybrid style where you're utilizing what a lot of people believed from the old times, and it's proven that it does work well, like a molasses or like certain other things. But then you're mixing in this new age technology with it to, like, again, just try and further the game and try new things. Like, you know, like you said, we've tested stuff where it's like, you know, now we're doing, you know, all our stuff is nano, besides these other additional additives. So we're doing nanos. Like the nano stuff is crazy, bro. Crazy. You literally go to a fucking tank, bro, to put the fucking, put it in. You pour it in, put it in the water, and the water's clear. You see nothing in there. And you're like I literally have my guys calling us. Hey, can you run back the cameras? I don't know if I put the nutrients in the tank. And I'm like, well, did you mix it yet? And it's like, no, as soon as it goes into the tank, it's dissolving. Like you can't see it, you know? So, and again, so you're talking about something that because it's nanoparticles, it just breaks down better. We have mixers on every one of our tanks that mixes every 15 minutes. We basically, got microbrewery software that we modified and hired programmers to like program it for cannabis. And so we basically took like what they use for microbreweries and the batches and the brews. We actually took that program and then modified it for our batch tanks and stuff and mixes. But we mix everything every 15 minutes. Nothing ever sits stale. And then, like I said, even then when you're putting the nano stuff in there, it's dissolving right away. There's no stuff like clogging the lines, none of that stuff. When we do like some of the teas and some of those other things like the microbials and stuff, we're doing hand treatments. We're not putting it through the fertigator, just so that it doesn't add anything into the lines and stuff like that. Just like, there's like so many things where it's like literally crazy. Cause for a while there, when my partner was talking about all these extra things that we do, like in our cultivation process, he's like, bro, well, you can't be bringing in people and showing them, cause then they're going to like start stealing and they're going to do this. And then if you tell them this, they're going to do that. And I'm like, bro, you know what I figured out about that, bro? They're not going to do it, because if you write the list on everything that they need to do, they're going to look at that shit and be like, yo, I got more things to do with my day than sit here and do those 152 things that you just labeled for me to do today, and they're like, and all these little things. And like I said, for us, it's always about attention to detail and all these other little things that you do that nobody else is doing. It's crazy to think right now, Lance, I'm out here in LA and the power's expensive and all the other shit's expensive. Bro, believe it or not, I'm growing a pound with all the other stuff, the expensive nutrients and stuff, $1,000 a pound. That's our cost. So when I'm selling smalls, I'm losing money, bro. I'm losing money every time, like unless I, have a good sale on it or something, right?
At the best, it's a wash,
right? And then on the other side, it's like and then that was where it was with having to chase, trying to be the best and produce the best, and then like I said, the whole adventure of going through this, because when I'm working through the equations, like I said, the math ain't mathin'. I can't be like these guys just punching out numerous pounds at a certain price and thinking I'm going to live to see tomorrow, because like I said, it's costing me $1,000 a pound, and then you're growing at a really high cost, and then by the time I put everything else together, like I said, we will be out of business, and so it was just like, all right, that's where we went on this quest on trying to find the right genetics and starting to pair with the people and do the right things. And like I said, I've been super blessed, bro, super blessed. Like I've made a lot of moves, man, and like a lot of stuff is really panned out, and a lot of stuff, even people told me like, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to go do this with him. You're going to go do that. Like, bro, you're fucking up, bro. Trust me. You don't want to do this. And I think, and I did it anyway, and it worked out many times. It's almost like I'm fucking got a golden horseshoe. You know what I mean? That like in my back pocket. And I'm just like, like I said, it's like, I guess it's just been about operating in a certain way, choosing the right people to work with. Like you said, the relationships, because I have countless relationships, bro. Like if, you know what I mean? Like shit, if we were sitting here and it was like, let me do a shout out roll. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to shout out, my boy, E from eBay's, who was part of Bad Boys.
Yeah,
and
you go through your whole life.
And fucking this, and fucking my boy, Sammy Bundles and Fields. Yeah. Fields is my dog. He's the one that gave me the Z that then we broke it open with. And like, you know what I mean? Like this, that. And I just start going down the names. It's just like, man, this is crazy. Like I was able to cultivate all those relationships, you know what I mean, with everything. And when I was showing people what I was doing and what it was about, because like one of the main things and funniest things was like, we were like, we don't want to show people the grow because we don't want them to steal the tech. But like I said, at a certain point, I was like, bro, it don't matter, man. They ain't going to do what we doing, bro. And so then it was like, let me start showing people. And it's like, again, it's like when people are coming in there, they're in awe, bro. Because they're like, especially growers, because I've been through 200 grows, you know what I mean? And I know that like when I go through other people's grows, I get depressed, bro. Because I'm like, I go to my grow every day and I'm like, bro, we got this, we got that. Like, when people are coming in, they're like, I pulled up in your gate, bro, that like your gate looks crazy, and I'm like, yeah, it's 3,500 pounds. My partner designed it in a way where we could still see through it, but he wanted to put wood as an accent, but it's like this petrified wood that he said that like, if a tractor trailer pulled a turn at 65 miles an hour and hit it, it won't break open. And he's right. Like, you know what I mean? So it was just like, but then they start seeing everything and it's just like, whoa, what the fuck? Like I said, it's like, I feel like my cheat code is my grow, because like like I said, it's our Ferrari. Ferrari. We have something that like nobody else really has. And the key is like, you know, we have this vehicle that allows us to control as many variables as possible. Yeah, bro, there's still little problems that can happen. And like, there's different nuances between, all right, I'm going to cut this at 52. Well, let's try 54 days. Let's try 50 days. Let's try 47 days. And, you know, obviously the weed's going to be a little bit different, but then that's just more experimentation on figuring out which one is the best day to cut this.
Constantly dialing. Let me ask you this, through this whole journey, your hardest lesson learned?
Man, I can't, honestly, I can't even answer that question, Lance. Cause like I said, it's how many times have I found my back against the wall in something where it was just like, you know, I was questioning along the way the whole time. I just kept hearing that voice, yo, you should have never did this. You should have never did this. You should have never did this, you know? And it was like, so to be able to kind of see everything and accomplish everything and to be to where we are, I can't pinpoint any one thing, man. I can't do it.
Jumping hurdles. Let me ask you this, advice for other brands, guys that see the relationships you built, how you guys this is actually working, these relationships you have and building this with, everyone's playing a different position. It's a bunch of growers in the room. Yeah, everyone's going to hang out but now you playing your position and seeing it grow, just advice for brands.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think right now, like I said, it's still early. So for me, I mean, obviously I like being able to collaborate and work with a lot of people. I learned that from all the social media stuff that I had done with other people, like the, you know, I call them the social media kids. They're all, you know, grown adults now or whatever. But at that time, they were kids to me. But like, you know, Logan Paul and Jake Paul and you know, Rudy Mancuso and all these guys. It was like I was watching what they were doing, King Batch, and they were like, you know, I watched what they were doing and I really learned from it. I also gave, you know, my opinions on stuff, which, you know, ended up proving that like there was some stuff that was right in the stuff that was going on. But it was just more about like cross-pollinating audiences and like really like it's cool to, again, we're trying to raise everything here. We're not trying to take it down. And it's just cool to see people that fuck with each other working together to accomplish the same goal. And just, I mean, at the end of the day, we're in a, you know, 20, 30, whatever I don't know how many billion-dollar industry it is right now. It's only going to get bigger. And there's plenty of pie for everybody to kind of do everything. So I think it's like, you know, again, like it's not about people being enemies and all this other stuff. And I just think that you know, I put personally, I try to pride myself in feeling this way, but somebody might tell me different. Like I try to have zero ego in this, bro. Cause one of my friends is high up in Google and, you know, he was telling me, he was like, bro, you know what my days are like? He's like, it's dealing with two things, managing people and managing egos. And the higher up you go, the more ego you're managing. So he's like, you know, that's what you really have to learn is like being able to control ego, because a lot of times ego is what gets in the way of success and things going right. And I totally agree with that. Like you were saying, cause like somebody's brand pops off and does something and then they start thinking they're better than everybody else. Well, that's going to be the beginning of the end. You know what I mean? And for me, it's just like, you know, again, trying to put that aside, you know, like I said, respecting what people have done in the craft and all the things that they're doing and just trying to work with everybody, bro. And like I said, just share the same vision and hope that everybody can benefit from it in the end, you know?
Yeah, it's like, don't hog the spotlight, shine it on each other.
100%.
There's more than one.
Yeah,
you know?
and like you said, it's a team thing, man. It's not one person, man. Like a lot of stuff, like I said, like, you know, you're like, what bad happened to you that you know, it's like, no, it's like, bro, I've been around so many people and we've heard so many stories. It's like everybody's gone through it, you know, and we're all, like I said, working towards the common goal. And it's just about like, you know, like I said, working together with people and trying to do cool things and create new things. Like when we did our packaging and we did everything, you know, everybody's telling me, oh, it's got to be colorful and you got to do this and the people won't buy it if it don't have fucking this and that all over it. And you're like, I was just like, look, I want clean and classic. I want something that like, you know, 10 years from now, even if I'm still rocking the Myron jars, that, you know this brand because I created a staple. It was
timeless.
Yes, exactly. And that was the model. But people were telling me, I had places that were telling me they wouldn't take it because the jar was too plain. But then it was funny because later on, I'm looking at it and I would pull up to somebody's house and I'm looking at the table and I noticed that there's all black jars on the table, but it's not because they're all my jars. It's because they peeled off the stickers of the other brands, but my shit is etched on here and mine's the only black jar on the table that still has the logo on it. You know what I mean? So when people are pulling up, they're seeing it. And so that was the thing. It's just like, again, just trying to do something new. I wanted it to look fit and finish. You know what I mean? Like this is actual 24 karat gold that is shaved down down and then basically was baked onto the Myron glass at 3 times at 1500 degrees. And we were the first ones to do this shit, bro.
Damn. That's why it's so clean. I love this new one too. That's almost like reflective as well.
One?
This one right here. I like this,
we did
bro.
all the styles. That's,
this is clean, dude.
bro. Just trying to do all the styles and shit like that.
I like it, bro. I like the play. You know what it reminds me of? Those two. It kind of reminds me of jewelry.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We wanted to do it like clean, high end. You know what I mean? And again, just trying to put that down. And like I said, when I did this, because I was talking to my partner, I was like, yo, we got to find some sort of a new process you could do it. When we actually did it, it was mad funny because I did this and I did it on the first run and I took it out and I dropped the jars. And then I get a phone call from somebody and they're like, bro, yo, I love what you did, bro. And I was like, sick, bro. Thank you, man. Yeah, like we were the first to do this. It's really 24 karat gold. And he's like, bro, the way that you wipe it and the name wipes off. And I was like, name wipes off? What do you mean the name wipes off? He's like, well, it fits the name Elusive because like you're wiping it off and then it's gone. So I'm like, hey, yo, go give me one of the jars right now. And then we're like doing it and the shit's wiping off. I was like, oh shit. I was like, so we're on the phone. We literally talking to people in Germany. We're talking to Myron. We're like, how do we do this? They're like, oh, well, we put a coating over the Myrons because of the, at the end process, you have to remove that coating. No one's really done that or said what you're talking about. So we ended up having to get a special astringent to strip the jar and then do it to get it to stick. But we're learning stuff. Like actually, even right now, it was crazy because we had worked through Myron with these. Like, I'm going to be the first one. Myron's doing jar customization for us from the factory, bro. Put on the fucking jars. It's already in motion right now. They did some new designs from us, but literally from Myron direct, bro. I'm the first one to do that. So, but that was the thing, is trying to be the first to do these new things and try new things. And again, because again, it's about opening up these new things and letting people experience something that they hadn't experienced before.
Yeah, and you're breaking down bounds. It's like the first collab with Food Saver. Who's getting that?
Yeah.
It's like I love people that, because they say what high tide raises all ships.
Yeah,
right.
That's what
it's
we
the
doing.
same thing, bro. What's next for Elusive, bro?
Honestly, I don't even know, man. Like, I mean, there's just so much because, I mean, obviously I want to we're going to keep hunting, look for new stuff, just keep and it definitely like I said, at one point when I said we had introduced strains that were like easily accessible, that were like popping or whatever, but not easy for a grower to get, right? And then now it's more about like, all right, let's just keep trying to like literally create a big, like you were talking about with your guys' stuff, a big exclusive library, our own library, continue to market around it, push it. Like I said, we've now seemed to have dialed into the characteristics and found, a certain niche or multiple niches where we can kind of slide in there. And like I said, I feel like we've gained the trust of people right now. So, to be able to keep trying to find this stuff and put new stuff, but have it be exclusive and be under our brand and know that we're keeping it tight because we're not, like I said, the cool part for us is that we are a grow, right? So from the point that you pop in the seed to the point that it ends up on this table in front of you, we can control that whole narrative. You know what I mean? Like, and know that our stuff isn't getting out there. None of the cuts are leaking, this and that, trying to keep it and just keep building the brand, man. And focusing. Cause like I said, I think we're getting in, to the middle innings right now. And if we position ourselves right, again, at some point, hopefully I'm in a conversation where it's like somebody's coming to me with a big check finally, cause obviously in the early phase, everybody thought they were getting these crazy checks cut to them. And it's now going to be where it's like, we build up enough IP and all this other stuff and our SOPs and our tech and just get it to the point where it's like, I decide and with my partner, we decide is like, do we want to go up against these big boys or do we want to just take this and go off into the sun and, hopefully go onto my own island and, and do my thing. But in the meantime, just keep growing and doing cool things, man. I just want to keep growing, man. Like I was telling you earlier, it's just been interesting because it's really cool to see all this success and be working with all these people and, getting a lot of respect from people. It's crazy because there's been this wave of other growers hitting me up who are just like, hey, yo, bro, you're the fucking man. Like, I fuck with you and this and that. And, it's funny because I'm like, I'm having this, it was like this moment where it was funny because I walked up to Stacks and one day and I was talking to him, at the Olympics. And, you know, seeing how crazy that shit was with the line and all the shit he was doing. And I'm like, bro, this shit, like, it's this, what Eazy's doing over here, and everybody else is just hoping people get to their table. You know what I mean? And you know, I seen Stack walk and I said, hey, yo, and we start, hey, what's up, bro? You know, blah, blah, blah. We start talking. And Stack said, he was like, bro, you know what's crazy? He was like, it's cool as shit that I got these people coming up to me right now that are like people I looked up to, that I was like, oh shit, like I want to be like this guy. He's the fucking guy. Like if I can be like him. And then now I got those guys coming back to me, telling me I'm the guy, you know? And he was like, and I was just like, damn, I'm like, yo, that must be a crazy feeling, bro. But you earned that, you know what I mean? And it's really cool. So, you know, now it feels like, you know, that's kind of happening to me a little bit, you know? So it's like, oh, fuck. And then it's mad stress, bro, like anxiety now. Like I was never getting anxiety before. And now all of a sudden, you know, it's been like, damn, like we're seeing a lot of success and a lot of cool things happening. But now I have to keep the cool things happening. I got to keep fucking things moving in the right direction because, you know, you never know when or if your time is up or how, you know, where it's going to go. I mean, obviously, like I said, there's things like Runts and Skittles that can stay forever. But then there's these other ones that came and had their moment and might be gone tomorrow.
Which is the majority of stuff.
100%. And a lot of brands and a lot of stuff, bro. So it's like, so it's just like, you know, just this expectation where it's like, man, bro, hopefully I can like keep this going. And, you know, again, just keep trying to advance and do cool things. You got to keep people like lured in. You know, like one thing I learned from social media for sure is like, you know, if you stop posting and you stop showing them cool things and you just keep showing them the same thing, bro, they're going to find whatever the new hot thing is and they're going to go follow that and you're going to get replaced, bro. They might still check on you and do whatever, but at the end of the day, now that's their new favorite brand for the moment. So it's just trying to like, you know, get people embedded into the brand, embedded into what we're trying to do. And, you know, like I said, from the start to finish, give them the best product possible. And as long as we keep doing that, I feel like people are going to keep fucking with us and keep, you know what I mean, buying into what we're doing. I think it's all working. And like, you know, actually I was saying something about like my boy Bundles, Sammy Bundles. I was like, he said it was funny because I was like, we were talking about business and he was like, bro, I remember when some shit was like really popping off for me. And he was like, you know, one thing I learned, and it's not rocket science, but he was like, when you catch a wave and the shit starts popping off, don't change anything, bro. Just keep fucking running that shit, bro. Don't change nothing. Don't pull people out of the equation. Don't put people in the equation. Don't do that. Just keep doing it. And I mean, I truly believe that's true. You know, it's like right now we're in the equation. The stuff's working. I'm not trying to reinvent anything. I just want to keep pushing forward. But I want to keep introducing new stuff. And, you know, like if it resonates and people fuck with it, we keep running it. If it don't, fucking cut it, bro. It's got to go, you know, and just keep doing it. Rinse and repeat, you know?
When there's a formula, there's a formula. Man, Ron, Elusive, man, we're going to roll some of these flavors up. I knew about the strains because I already been smoking them. You got to try them. But yo, First Smoke family, what a journey, bro. Relentless. That's what comes up with you, bro.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate you, bro.
I always have like some type of word in my just pops in my head after I sit down with someone long enough. And for you, it feels like relentless, bro.
Yeah.
And I love to see that because that's why you're on top right now.
Yeah,
that's why we're talking about you. That's why you're growing from one of the biggest names. And you know what I'm saying? And it's real interesting the position you played. So just thank you for coming on today and being open, bro.
Yeah, no, like I said, thank you for having me here, man. It was like a long time coming. We talked about this for a while, you know what I mean? And it's really cool to like actually like come on here. And, you know, we did the Pheno hunt. Obviously we were vibing and stuff like that. So I was just like, man, this is cool. Like,
then
let's run
it back,
your
bro.
stuff
at the homies and I'm going, damn, which one's this? And he's like, oh, that's the homie stuff. And I'm going, damn, buddy. So this is a fire strain. This has grown great. Like we put 6 of the top hitters against each other. Fire. And literally number 2 was of all of them. And we were splitting hairs. It was like, what was number 2? And I kept asking, what was number 2? And then they told me, oh, that's Elusive's new strain. And I was like, damn, bro, tell me what the genetics are on that. Like when I start to go that deep, I know this is fire. Yep. So that just shows you too, bro. And you're going up against, when we put those 6 joints against each other, they were going up against big brands.
That's fire.
So it just shows you.
And just so you know, that number 2 that it ended up being, it's currently like my number 6, you know what I mean?
Buddy. Well, wow. But yeah, First Smoke family, we out. Peace. First Smoke family,
If you want more video, unreleased content, stuff we can't put on YouTube, you want early drops, weeks and weeks in advance, FSOTD.com gets you all that. You become part of the family. You get hooked up with early content. You get unreleased content we can't put out on YouTube because we get age restricted and we get strikes, the whole deal. FSOTD.com gets you hooked up like family. But if you just want to keep watching, here we go. Let's let another one roll.